There is power in king's blood. Melisandre and others have told us this quite a few times, but generally they're speaking supernaturally, right? It's also true in the mundane, literal sense, in a monarchy especially, even more so in an unstable monarchy. Being the child of a king comes with a certain measure of power. Potential power, shall we say, the kind of power that can do more harm to you than good, or it can perhaps lead to bigger and better things. It's really kind of a hard to predict and depending on circumstances and context type of situation. But part of the reason it's a potential power is, well, for that power to matter, you have to know you have it. You have to know you have king's blood, right? Not everybody does in this case. With Robert Baratheon's bastards, they definitely don't all know who their father is. In fact, the three that we're focusing on today, we have a nice range of options. One doesn't know, one does know, and one we're not entirely sure about. So that's interesting too. Now, honestly, when I say Robert Baratheon's bastards, I don't really have to say that, do I? I just need to say Baratheon bastards and specify the timeline. Because, I mean, Stannis and Renly, that's not their game, is it? And who else is going to have Baratheon bastards in this era? So that's interesting, right? It's kind of the way they were written. But of course, all Baratheons have some dragon in their ancestry, right? Robert Baratheon's bastards are Egg's great-grandchildren. That's mostly trivia, though, is it? Or is it? Maybe not. Indeed, Melisandre will be in this episode, too, because these questions of blood are specifically and intrinsically and completely just tied overall to who these characters are. Maybe less so to Mya Stone, but maybe that'll change. Gendry is deep in R'hllor, and without Melisandre's influence, and Edric, with her influence a little bit, has kind of rejected it. So, that's kind of telling, I think. Now, so Robert dies early in the story, as we know, but his shadow never left, or perhaps his shadows is a better term, because his children, they're individuals with their own personalities, their own hopes and dreams and struggles and desires and all that, but there's no escaping his influence on them or his lack of influence on them. Either way, it's a big deal. Having little presence in someone's life when you're their father, that's huge. Having a lot of presence in their life is also huge. And this presence, this influence remains even after he's been dead for 4.5 books. Robert Baratheon comes up a lot because his children are everywhere. And it's not so simple as his children. It's the ones called his children who aren't, the ones who are his children that aren't known that way. It's just a whole big thing, isn't it? And on top of all that, Mya, Gendry, Edric, I'll probably call her both Mya and Mya in this episode. They don't have complete stories yet, right? Well, even if they did, we'd still have a lot to say about them. But these are three characters who are still very much in play in the Game of Thrones. Maybe they're too young to be players, so they might just be pieces, but they're not without some agency. They have some, certainly. It's not completely taken from them. There are circumstances in place in both society and their own lives are very different, even though there's a lot of overlap. Their tales are compelling and a great insight into the variety of ways bastards are treated in Westeros. We get a variety of settings and contexts and upbringings, and gives us a bunch of different looks. They're all children of Robert, but their paths are very different. And sure, it's true that Westeros doesn't treat bastards well, but that's also not very specific. It isn't just a one-size-fits-all. Not all bastards are treated badly in the same way, and there are exceptions, right? Bastards can rise high, too. That's a phrase we've heard maybe as often as there's power in king's blood. So combine that thought with the notion we just presented, that all three of these characters are active in the story. We haven't seen their ends yet. And those endings or the pathway towards those endings could be special. So we'll discuss them as individuals at first and then at the end as a group. All that and more on this episode of History of Westeros podcast. Hello and welcome back, everybody. It is our first non-Dunk and Egg content episode of the well, not the year, but almost of the year ever since after Dunk and Egg. Now, we're not done with Dunk and Egg content, but it's time to start mixing in some other things. And we're back in our usual time slot, Mondays at 3 Eastern. Sundays at 3 Eastern. That's not usual. That would be completely unusual. So yeah, Sundays at 3, we're back here. This is where we'll be for the time being until House of the Dragon Season 3 gets going, and then we're back on Mondays. You can find us...
Although not next week.
What's that?
Although not next week.
Not next week. Not every Sunday, just most Sundays. And we will be continuing to publish the remastered versions of our Blackfire Rebellion series on the off weeks in the coming months here. So that'll be nice and fun to have out there as well. You can catch us on any platform. Every video is live streamed on YouTube, unless it's a scripted episode, in which case it gets dropped separately. But they're all on Spotify and every podcast platform you can find. We are pretty much everywhere, but if you can check us out on Patreon, you can get it ad-free. Shout out to Nina, goodqueenally.tumblr.com, still doing her thing with excellence over there. Good Queen Alley with one Y in Alley. And her latest blog post, what did I say?
I mean, it's true that there's one Y in Alley, but normally you say with one L, so...
Oh, yeah. I knew that sounded wrong.
Clarification.
There is also one L, one Y, two O's, two E's. Let's go through all the letters here. And her latest post is talking about the implications of what Aerion Brightflame asks for from Dunk when he mistakes him for Stable Boy. Like the things he asks for. Is that normal? Does he really just ask for a pretty wench wherever he goes and that's given to him? Yeah, it's a little bit of a dark subject, but very relevant, very realistic. So you want to check that out once again over at goodqueenalley.tumblr.com. You can hit us up with questions of your own on any podcast platform, or any podcast platform, but also any social media platform. We're pretty much everywhere. I guess we're not so active on Twitter anymore, but we're on X, and we're on Blue Sky, Facebook, and where else are we active these days? We're on Discord. I'm forgetting one. TikTok is the other one. Instagram,
Facebook.
Yeah.
I've been doing.
I said Facebook.
Oh yeah, I've been doing lots of reels and TikToks. And
Instagram's the newest one. We've been around. Obviously, it's been around for a while, but we haven't been on Instagram very long.
So we most
as a
appreciate
show, our
the
individuals
follow on Instagram because we are trying to get our numbers up.
Yes. So it's just History of Westeros over on Instagram.
No, it is not.
It's The History of Westeros.
Yes.
The History of Westeros. Okay. The History of Westeros. That's us.
That's actually why we weren't on Instagram for a long time. There's an account called History of Westeros, and I messaged them many times trying to get the name, and I kept hoping for it, and eventually I just had to give up.
They never responded, did they?
It's just an inactive, totally dead account. Anyways.
Someone that doesn't even use it. What a tragedy. Here is our opening trivia question, as is so often the case. Robert's last known bastard was Bara, whom he fathered on a virgin sex worker in the year 298. She was born in 298, that is, maybe fathered in 297. Regardless, Bara and her mother were murdered early in A Clash of Kings on Cersei's orders. But who did the actual killing? Answer at the end, but the answer is also revealed during the episode. So if you didn't know it and you're paying close attention, you'll hear it and you'll get it. Let's tell you what we have coming today. I don't have a bunch of creative section headers today because we're really going through each of these characters with a bit of a format. With each one of them, we'll do their first appearance and then maybe some subtopics like with Gendry, especially in Gendry's case, because he's the most prominent of these characters. He has the most appearances. We'll talk about him as the bull and amongst the Brotherhood Without Banners and becoming a knight. But the main template for these three characters is their appearance, their character, and then who knows, as in who knows their identity, who knows who they are, who knows their connection to Robert, and all the aspects of that are relevant to the story or that we find interesting. Now, our poll. Let's talk about that. We got a quick poll for you all. A little bit different than normal is we're going to reveal the results of the poll a little before the end instead of at the end. That way we can add it to our discussion and you'll see, based on the question, why it fits so neatly into our discussion. There's a good chance that the false Lannister Baratheon line, meaning Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella, and Shireen will all die, plus Stannis. So who's going to have Storm's End in the long run? As usual, YouTube gives us 4 choices, which is perfect. Gendry, Edric Storm, Mya Stone, or other. right? So
which I changed to someone else in the poll, so no one got,
an other.
No one said like the others have. I just wanted to make that extra clear. So
they do have blue eyes, just like Baratheons. So yeah,
and you might
not
say
so much
that
black
the
hair,
others
but
might take all of Westeros. If I don't think that's how it'll end, but
I don't either. But you're right. That someone could definitely interpret it that
not
way.
Other.
So again, results near the end rather than at the end. We'll discuss those in context with the question and give our own takes on that. But here we go. It's a very interesting and poignant starting point for this episode. I thought this quote was pretty perfect. As Robert is dying, he has some last words and wishes for his best friend. Quote, "I will give Lyanna your love, Ned. Take care of my children for me."
The words twisted in Ned's belly like a knife. For a moment, he was at a loss. He could not bring himself to lie. Then he remembered the bastards. Little Bera at her mother's breast, Mya in the Vale, Gendry at his forge, and all the others. "I shall guard your children as if they were my own," he said slowly.
And all the others, there you go. They're Robert's children. All the others are Robert's bastards. See, we figured it out. The blue eyes, that's the... Yeah. I wonder how much mileage I can get out of that joke. Now, unfortunately, Robert, Ned didn't have much of a chance to follow through on that promise. It's not for lack of trying, but he joined you and Lyanna in the afterlife a lot sooner than expected. And frankly, only one of Robert's bastards has died since the books began, and it's Bera, like that's the one we just mentioned. While Robert Baratheon's namesake, Rob, right? Have you all caught that? I know I've mentioned it before, but it's been a while. Rob with two B's. That's like Rob B, Robert Baratheon. It's like he was named with the extra B is thrown in there to be the last initial there. And of course, Rob is dead as well. So yeah, Ned's own children are dying at the roughly the same rate as Robert's bastards.
You know, Aziz, that quote I just read?
Yeah.
It made me think of one thing. He says, little Bera, little Mya, little Gendry, and the rest. It's like a Simpsons joke when he goes, little Bart,
forgetting the
little
other
Lisa,
who's my
little
other kid?
Marge, yeah. And the rest.
The rest. You can't think of... Imagine, that would be comedic because Gendry does forge... Edric in this castle, those two twins that Cersei murdered, those other 9 whose names we don't know. Actually, I know them. There's Bill, there's Joanne. He just goes through all of them. It's like a food description. What George's like, also all Robert's bastards take longer to list than the food served at the red wedding. Or not the red wedding, the purple wedding. So, yeah. Not the most uplifting moment there, but it's really big and poignant and important. It says a lot. Coming back to the scene, it's like, wow, that really is a lot came from that, isn't it? It's still doing work, that line. Now, again, Egg's youngest daughter, bringing this back to Dunk and Egg briefly, was Raelle, who married the Laughingstore's heir Ormond, whose heir in turn was Steffon, who fathered Robert, Stannis, and Renly with Cassandra Estremont. That's right. So we're going to discuss each of the 3 bastards in their birth order. So that means we start with Mya Stone. She was the first of Robert's bastards, not just the first that we know about. She was born in 279-280. The World of Ice and Fire app and the implications from the main books suggest that she was just a common woman of the Vale. There's really not much detail other than that. Her profession wasn't noteworthy or known or anything like that. So Robert himself was born in 262, meaning he fathered her when he was 17 or 18. And again, this was before he was betrothed to Lyanna, and was a big part of the reason Lyanna was more than wary of marrying Robert. Like, this guy already has a bastard. We're betrothed, we're teenager, and he already has a daughter. Like, what the heck? How can I trust this guy? It's hard to argue with that, and the proof is in the later events. Like, yeah, Lyanna was right. And it's interesting that Lyanna heard this. Like, it's not like Lyanna was in the Vale. So when we discuss, like, how much of a secret Mya's parentage is, well, Lyanna found out from afar. And not directly from Ned or Robert, we don't think. Maybe Ned told her about it. And that's how she knows. But it seems like she heard it elsewhere, like that gossip filtered through other channels, and somehow got to her. Maybe, who knows what that channel was, but she found out, and it was a big negative for her. And I don't think it would have taken a lot of digging. I mean, Sansa finds out pretty quickly. Not right away. She doesn't find out in A Storm of Swords, but she does find out relatively soon. And she has the bastard surname. That's something we'll get into, the ins and outs of when you get the surname and when you don't. You only get the bastard surname, Stone, Snow, Flowers, whatever, if your parents, or one of your parents, or both, are noble. Mya's mother was definitely not noble, so the fact that she's called Mya Stone is an open admission that her father was noble, even if not everyone is speaking openly of who that particular man was. But it's also just widely known. Which is a difference with the other characters that we're going to discuss. So maybe Lyanna overheard Ned talking about it, or one of Ned's household guards was gossiping about it. She overheard that, because Ned wouldn't have been in the Vale just solo. He would have had some Winterfell men with him, and they might have gossiped about it. There's a lot of ways. It's just impossible to track this grapevine. It's easy to imagine that it happened, though, because it's just so many possibilities. Now, the obvious comparison to her is Harry Harding in a lot of ways, because not to her, but to her circumstances, because Harry Harding is acting out like a young Robert in some ways here. He fathered a daughter, also by a commoner. This daughter's named Alice, and Harry was also about 16, a little younger than Robert when Alice was born, and he doesn't specify, or no, we're not told, but we're not sure what this common-born woman's job was. Probably a domestic servant, probably connected to the household in some way. Otherwise, it's a lot more random. Someone that works in the castle. That's just proximity does a lot of work here. This girl that bore this child did marry a Waynwood man-at-arms. So that is another reason to suspect she was already working in the household. All that really adds up. Now, in the same sense, quite possibly Mya's mother was of a similar job, a domestic servant of some kind, probably at the Gates of the Moon, because that's where Mya works. She officially works for Nestor Royce, running those mule trains up there, but maybe her mother could have been born or could have worked at the Eyrie too, just in the general vicinity is very likely. So that is just an uncommon, or a common rather, not uncommon, shall we say, uncomfortable thing about medieval and proto-medieval settings. This is really normal that domestic servants, I mean, it's still true now in the real world, maybe not to the extent it was in this sort of setting, or the real world version of this setting.
How many times has someone slept with the nanny or something?
Right? Like, that is just the oldest type of story. Like, that is common type gossip, right? Common type drama in a household. Like, that's just very ordinary in a certain sense. In modern times, it's a lot less likely to result in children. People have a lot more sense of how to stop that. I guess that's one of the big differences, but it still happens. People are still preyed on that way. The power imbalance is real and exploited constantly, right? So most likely it's worse in Westeros than it is in the real world, but it's a big deal in both. In fact, Franklin Flowers, a Fossaway bastard, who we'll be talking about in a future episode. Speaking of, slight segue here. This episode was actually chosen as part of Topics Moot 2025. As you all are well aware, this is no longer 2025, but our schedule got a little wonky. We had to bump this one episode, so we're just now getting to it. Topics Moot 2026 is already underway, y'all. Voting has begun, and it's already looking likely that we're going to have a Fossaway episode. So we'll talk about this a bit more at the time. But yeah, Franklin Fossaway / Franklin Flowers, the brown apple Fossaway. His mother was a washerwoman at Cider Hall. You know, assaulted or forced on, whichever term is appropriate. They all fit. It's not good, but it certainly results in a lot of children in this setting. So Harry also, like Robert, basically just abandoned the mother of this child the second the kid was born, and he has another child with a girl named Saffron. So he's a regular Robert Baratheon, just with less mobility. Robert was a temporary resident of the Vale. And we don't know at all what happened to Mya's mother. Not unlikely she had a similar path as these other women who bore the children of highborn people within the household. They got married to someone in the castle to lessen the stigma, to lessen the scandal, things like that. And maybe to a man-at-arms or to a lesser knight, something like that. Jon Arryn very likely would be the one to have taken care of that. Given who the father was, given his connection to Robert, he certainly would have been aware of it. Given it was an open secret, there's no way Jon Arryn didn't know. So Jon's involvement here is also very interesting. We don't have a lot of idea here, but we have to think that Jon, being the kind of man he was, knowing Robert, would want to keep him away from this woman, perhaps, even though that's cruel to the child and the mother. The political fallout would be much worse, potentially, if Robert were to actually develop feelings for this woman. And, well, it's Jon's responsibility as Robert's caretaker to make sure he doesn't get himself in these embarrassing situations. Yeah, it's Robert's fault. It's not Jon's fault, but still Jon is he's responsible for him. Robert is a young man. And let's not forget, this is before Robert had a reputation. This isn't, we know what to expect from Robert. This guy's always sleeping around. No, this is when that just started. This is young 17 or 18-year-old Robert doing this for the first time. So this isn't like a pattern yet. It became one, but this was Mya was the beginning of that pattern. So it wasn't something that Jon Arryn could necessarily see coming until it started happening, and then it repeated, and it was like, oh boy, what do we have a womanizer on our hands. We have a man who can't keep it in his pants on our hands. Well, I got to do something about it. I got to help him with that. I'm his caretaker. I got to maybe try to keep him under control. So, and Robert, there's all sorts of plans for Robert. He's the heir to Storm's End. Of course, there's no knowledge he's going to be king one day, but he's on track to be one of the 7 great lords of Westeros. That's a huge deal. Keeping his nose clean, keeping him from having these things that might be problems down the line. He's too young to care about the consequences, but Jon Arryn is an older man. He knows. He's well aware of what could go wrong here and would maybe have just done his best to keep Robert from going too far, maybe to mitigate the damage, things like that. Let's talk about Mya's first appearance. It's very convenient for us because her first line also immediately includes her description, too. Nice and succinct and complete here. Quote, "A night ascent with the moon not even full? Even Lysa should know that's an invitation to a broken neck."
The mules know the way, Sir Brendan. A wiry girl of 17 or 18 years stepped up beside Lord Nestor. Her dark hair was cropped short and straight around her head, and she wore riding leathers and a light shirt of silvered ringmail. She bowed to Catelyn, more gracefully than her lord. "I promise you, my lady, no harm will come to you. It would be my honor to take you up. I've made the dark climb 100 times. Michael says my father must have been a goat."
A goat? Well, a stag. It's not too far off, I guess. Stags don't climb like goats, but they do have the hoofs and anyway. So her description, along with her half-siblings that we'll get to in good time in this episode, is important because the seed is quite strong. I mean, these features are just, it's like every single time, right? She doesn't have long hair, so it's hard to tell if she got the curly locks. She keeps it short and clean and neat, and she's graceful. So technically she serves Lord Nestor here. She worked at his household. And Nestor got promoted after all this by Littlefinger to the actual holder of the Gates of the Moon rather than just the Castellan. And of course, that only holds if Littlefinger's power holds. So that was his way of buying Nestor onto his side. Now, Mya would only be indirectly affected by all this political back and forth with Littlefinger and all that. I don't think she's like Nestor Royce Falls, that she's going to fall with him. No, she's just not politically important like that, despite who her father is. The mule runs are really important. Mya is like the only one who does this. Sansa specifically thinks about her. It's like, Mya's the only one bringing us certain food. Without her, we wouldn't have this, that, the other when they're still in the area. Now, of course, the area's been abandoned for winter. They descend the mountain, and they're not going to go back up there till winter's over, which means they probably won't go back there at all in the length of A Song of Ice and Fire. We're probably not going to see the Eyrie again unless it's some sort of like epilogue type setting. But even then, we might not, because they're not going to reopen it for a while. And it terrifies people. That's why she's the only one that can do it. It's scary as hell. The heights, the winding, narrow passageways. It's like, fear of heights is one of the most ubiquitous human fears there is. People that aren't afraid of heights are a little uncommon. People who love heights are extremely rare, but they do exist. People that are genuinely, sincerely, positively affected by being in a position that almost everybody else would be terrified of. Mya is that type of person. She is unique. It's a cool way for George to give her a form of bravery, a rare form of courage that has nothing to do with battle. Nothing whatsoever. Right? She's immune to fear of heights. In fact, I think she likes it. She's like an Alex Honnold, if you know climbing. That's that free solo climbing guy that climbs mountains and buildings without ropes. That guy loves it. He's not just doing it for the attention. He genuinely loves the feeling of being up there, of doing it. He doesn't get adrenaline rushes. No, it's like a calm sincerity, a calm serenity. Not sincerity, serenity. And that's, I think, Mya Stone. She loves the height. She enjoys the views. It doesn't scare her. It's not just something she says to pump herself up. It's a genuine internal softness. She's like, yeah, I love this. And it might be because of partly her upbringing. She was raised doing this. She got adjusted to it as a kid, and she never learned to be afraid of it. Things like that. There's a lot. It's amazing the things that when you get used to them as a very young person, how well they can stick into adulthood. So I feel like this is Mya. She got into this very young and took to it. So this is probably how she got involved. Like, she was born to this commoner, and Robert and Jon Arryn wanted to give her a position where he could keep an eye on her, and she's Robert's child. He might actually have some noble intention behind this too, just making sure she's well taken care of. He doesn't want to just throw her to the wolves or the falcons, whatever. It's the Vale. So yeah. So he wouldn't be taking her away and hiding her. He was kind of doing the best, like you said, doing the best he can. It's not his fault that Robert fathered this child that he shouldn't have. But, she's still a servant. She's a mule girl. Even though she's Robert's child, she doesn't have the status or the danger even associated with her. In some ways, she's at less risk than an Edric or a Gendry or even some of the other nameless children of Robert Baratheon, because she was raised this way. She's very happy where she is. She's very set in her role. No one really sees her as a threat to make a claim or someone to make a claim through her. She's a mule girl. That says a lot. That's not a negative thing coming from me, but from the nobles of Westeros, it's absolutely a negative thing. They look down on that, and thus she's not a threat because they look down on her. Right? It's not going to be necessarily the same with a Gendry or an Edric because, one, they're boys, they're men, and that automatically makes them a bigger threat in this society as far as claims go. But still, the human angle here is big. We should think more about Jon Arryn. Like, what did he do? What was his concern besides just making sure the girl was well taken care of? I'm sure he had concern for her as a human being. But, like, does he want the Lannisters to find out? I mean, Robert's betrothed to Lyanna. I mean, later on, he's betrothed to Cersei. Like, the picture changes, but the information's already out there. Now, Cersei made threats against Mya when Robert suggested maybe he'll bring her to court. And he's like, yeah, this is a dangerous city for a young girl like that. Cersei's like, yeah, I'll have her killed, without saying so much. And Robert got super mad about that. And I think that's when he hit her. But he didn't press the issue beyond that. So Robert took her threat seriously, basically, and he really wasn't that into it in the first place. Robert was like, yeah, this was kind of a flight of fancy. Like, yeah, I could have my daughter around, but he didn't really care that much because he's Robert Baratheon. He just on to the next woman, on to the next bottle of wine, right? Yeah. I'm not here to defend this man like that. So yeah, and Nina puts it pretty well too. Like, who in the realm is realistically going to rally to the cause of Mya Stone. Like, this is not how it works. Like, again, I'm not denigrating her. This is what they would do. So, yeah, I don't know that Jon was that worried about it. As long as she's not thrown in Cersei's face, she's probably safe, especially given where she's living. Like, how Cersei doesn't have some network of assassins that she can just dispatch to the Vale. She's trying to have Jon Snow killed, and she's making a botch of that and other things. Yeah, she wouldn't have been able to pull that off very well. So she didn't try to kill Mya just because she existed. She would have tried to kill Mya if it was thrown in her face, which is telling, and that's going to matter when we discuss Gendry, less so Gendry because they don't know about him, but Edric Storm for sure. So in other words, it's less about Cersei's fear of her children being usurped in the case of Mya. It's about the embarrassment and shame that Robert cheated on her. She didn't, because Mya was born before he married Cersei. But still, it's still an embarrassment to Cersei because it's a connection to all the other bastards he's had after he did marry her. So it's still part of that bag. So yeah, she was born prior to the war and all that. So her place in things is a little different in that sense. Yeah, Michael also says that she has the eyes of the owl, in addition to saying her father must have been a goat. But wait, so is he not in on the open secret? If so many people know that Mya's father was Robert, and she's not really acting like she knows either, which is a little peculiar. So, it's fitting. It's not weird that Michael doesn't know because he's so young. It's an open secret that the adults know. Right? Michael's 14, 15, her age roughly, maybe a little older. He's not very old. Maybe Lyn Corbray, the one he squires to, would have told him, but maybe not. It's not necessarily.
Would it have benefited him to tell him?
Yeah.
Lyn's kind of not the best guy. I think if he had a reason to do it, he would. But if he didn't, I don't think he would just do it.
Maybe he would do it just to be a jerk because he would like just to get a reaction and just to stir up trouble because he's Lyn Corbray. But yeah, you're right. I don't see a compelling benefit to him.
There's more likely to be trouble with him not knowing and him spurning her because he thinks she's too lowly.
Yeah.
And which is just would be so, tragic because she's actually, a king's bastard, right?
Yeah. And here's where that comes up when Catelyn asks Mya, like, you keep talking about Michael, who is that? Quote.
Michael's my love, Mya explained. Michael Redfort. He's squire to Sarah Lyn Corbray. We're to wed as soon as he becomes a knight. Next year or the year after. She sounded so like Sansa, so happy and innocent with her dreams. Catelyn smiled, but the smile was tinged with sadness. The Redforts were an old name in the Vale, she knew, with the blood of the first men in their veins. His love she might be, but no Redfort would ever wed a bastard.
Ironic that Catelyn thinks her too lowborn when she's actually a king's daughter. But, even the bastard daughter of a king is not that much of a marriage prize given these circumstances. Raised as a domestic servant, as the mule girl, which again, it's impressive that she's the mule girl. It's a really dangerous, hard job that would drive people crazy and they would hate it. They would be in fear all the time. But again, the nobles look down on that. But it also makes for great humor like this. There's all sorts of these little hidden identity jokes when you're dealing with characters like this as a reader of A Song of Ice and Fire. We don't know that much about Michael, whether he's manipulating Mya or whether he's kind of naive too. He's kind of young, so it's certainly possible that it's the latter true. But as a squire of Lyn, you kind of wonder what kind of influence this kid's had on him and if he's kind of going that same direction. So there's a lot in common. His relationship with Mya has a lot in common with Robert's fling with Mia's mother. It's a little bit of a pay it forward kind of karmic situation. Robert's attraction and interest in Mia's mother was genuine, though, as usual, fleeting. It was brief. Again, though, usual hadn't been established back then. But, yeah, she was the first of what became a pattern. But the similarity lies in the privilege inherently of the man in question. There's no risk for Michael or Robert, really. If there is a bastard, it's someone else's problem. Right? Well, for Robert's, Jon Arryn had to deal with that, or his brothers, or what have you, or Ned. It's not his problem, even though it's his responsibility. It should be his problem, but it isn't, and he knows it. Michael Redfort's in a similar position of privilege. Not as high as Robert, but pretty high, and knowing that whatever he does with Mya, he can just get away with it and have no consequences. But for her, or for Mya's mother, there's all sorts of consequences. Having the bastard of a highborn person is going to change your life. Maybe not for the better. Probably not for the better. Maybe for very much the worse. Maybe for the better. It's possible. Maybe you get some money out of it. You get a higher station potentially. But it might end up getting you killed or the kid killed. So it's a real lottery type of situation. So again, Sansa learned through gossip, through one of the servants, not even through one of the other highborn girls. It was Maddie who told her that Mya is Robert's kid. And she's like, oh yeah. She caught it. She's like, oh yeah, I can tell by looking at her. She noticed as soon as it was pointed out to her, she's like, yeah, I see it. And that's the case for a lot of these kids of Robert. His look, the seed being so strong as it is, if you're not looking for it, you don't necessarily catch it. I'm talking about people in Westeros. But if it's pointed out to you, we've seen it a number of times where someone goes, oh yeah, look at that. Just looks right. And there's some other cases where they don't need to have it pointed out. They notice it themselves immediately. Ned Stark has that happen once or twice. Brienne has it happen when she meets Gendry.
Because Brienne was so, into Renly. She had more of an eye for it, I would say,
yes.
Right?
It was so shocking. Like, oh my God, that looks like Renly. Yeah. And she was also like groggy. So there's other things going on there too that fueled that moment. But the look is there. It wasn't, it's not exaggerated. And Sansa has learned a lot of Sansa's naivete, like her learning to not be naive, has come in the Vale. Like, so it started in King's Landing, right? Or being around Cersei, being around all these awful things. But it's continued very much in the Vale. And a lot of it is learning how naive she had been. She's not just becoming less naive, she's addressing the fact within her mind that she was naive. It isn't just a coincidence. She's aware of what she was. She compares herself to younger women who are still in that space and both wants to be like that and feels bad for them. She's like, I would like to be naive like that. I would like to not have all these concerns and cares and weights. But I also feel bad for them because one day they're going to learn and it's going to be really hard for them like it was for me. And so she has some idea of Mya more than she would have before because she's now masquerading as a bastard as well. And that puts her on not equal footing, but closer footing than they were and gives Elaine more a chance to put herself in Mya's shoes. And Sansa understands a bit, too, the whole Michael Redfort angle, because Sansa herself met Waymar Royce on the way to the wall before he took the black, and she had a little brief crush on him. So she kind of gets it. Michael Redfort, Waymar Royce, these are very similar ranked houses. They're both from the Vale, similar age. Yeah, real similar. So this is a good segue to more insight on Mya. Elaine observing Mya thusly in the very first lines of this chapter here. Quote,
she was reading her little lord a tale of the winged knight when Mya Stone came knocking on the door of his bedchamber, clad in boots and riding leathers and smelling strongly of the stable. Mya had straw in her hair and a scowl on her face. That scowl comes of having Michael Redfort near, Elaine knew.
Yep. Catelyn was right, unfortunately. She did indeed get jilted and left for a noble girl. Catelyn saw that coming a mile away. She said to her, she thought at the time, if Michael Redfort lay with her, it would be on the wrong side of the bed. She was right about that too. So again, the responsibility for all this gets pushed away from the person with the most agency. The man is the one with the power here, whether it's a teenager, a teenage squire, Redfort, or teenage lord-in-waiting Robert Baratheon. Bastards are assumed to be lusty and wanton because of the act that made them. The blame is pushed onto the child, and the responsibility of taking care of the child is generally pushed on to the woman, the mother, where the father just goes off and lives their noble life, mostly pretending it never happened, unless they happen to like the kid, or the kid is, skilled in some way, then maybe that changes. In fact, this is perhaps a dark angle to why Michael was attracted to Mya in the first place. He's a young kid growing up hearing what bastards are in Westeros. What is he told? They're wanton and lusty. If you're a 13, 14, 15-year-old boy, that's a plus. Like, wanton and lusty, you say. That sounds great, right? So it's a double-edged sword. It denigrates them in society, puts them on a lower social standing, and it attracts this sort of interest, this bad interest, this negative interest that leads to these negative outcomes. So yeah, Nina suggests that maybe that's exactly what he was hoping for Mya, that she would conform to these bastard, lusty, wanton stereotypes. It's exactly what he wanted. It doesn't mean he didn't care about her to some extent, but in a I'll only care about you as long as I care about you type of way. Like, this won't last. For her, Mya's thinking this is everything. For Michael, he might be saying that. Maybe to a certain extent he's convincing himself, but if he were to really sit down and have a talk with his father or someone else or the adults in the room, they'd be like, dude, come on. You're going to marry a noble woman, your father. So there's a big wide range here of him being almost as naive or him just lying to her, pushing all this, yeah, I love you, blah, 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 we'll be together. But just knowing that's not true. It's hard to say. We don't know Michael very well. We haven't seen him much at all. We only see these things from afar. However, Michael is there at the tourney. That's what Sansa meant, or Elaine meant, by thinking, that scowl on her face comes from having Michael Redfort nearby. And yeah, he's there for the tournament. So she's trying to avoid him. You kind of wonder whether she's going to watch the tournament. Will she, not participate. Will she, sit in the stands and be a spectator, or is it just she just kind of done with it all? I don't know. And that's interesting because the tournament of the Winged Knights comes with a lot of speculation on things that could happen, whether it's an attack by the clansmen or whether Sir Shadrick is going to make his move on Elaine. Mya isn't directly connected to these things, but could be sucked into them somehow. Obviously, maybe the attack of the clansmen could involve all sorts of people. That's in this chapter with where Sansa notes her scowl. She doesn't actually appear again in that chapter, but we can certainly speculate on what comes next. Now, there's a person interested in her that isn't Michael, and that's Lothor Brune, captain of Littlefinger's guards. He has romantic feelings for her. Now, he could declare his love for her at the tournament, in a kind of a chivalrous, romantic style or what have you, or he could do it behind closed doors, but it seems like it's coming. She's not going to be one of those girls who hands out a favor like Elaine will, maybe some of these other noble girls like a Miranda Royce, but it's still a festive opportunity. It's a festive moment. Feelings would be high, positivity would be in the air. Maybe Lothor doesn't clock that Mya's not feeling it because of Michael Redfort. He may not be aware of all that. But either way, he's a reasonable match for her in terms of status. He's the captain of the guards. He's a knight. He is nobly born, though on the lower end of it still, he's a Brune. That is nobly born, even though the Brunes don't accept him. It still counts. He's also competent. He's shown that he's a good fighter. He was good in the Battle of Blackwater. He's Lothor Apple Eater, if you recall, did some damage to the Fossilways. They just keep coming up, don't they? So it definitely seems possible that that's a connection. That's who she ends up having a relationship with, maybe her marriage. But there's nothing whatsoever to indicate she's into him. We know he's into her, but, this has got to be a two-way street. She's not going to be forced into this. This isn't like that, I don't think. Of course, lords can tell anyone who is in their domain who to marry, but I don't think Sweet Robin is terribly concerned with this right now. It's pretty low on the list, and I don't think Littlefinger or his people care much either. I don't think they're too worried about Mya. I don't think she's on his radar very much. But I do think he knows who she is. If there was an angle for him to gain out of Mya's parentage, if there was something for Littlefinger to gain out of who her father is, he would exploit it. But I don't think there is. I don't see what he can do. Like Nina said, who's going to rally behind her? The way she was raised and her employment sets her as lower status despite who her father is. It works against her king's blood in that sense. So, yeah, I just don't know that he has much of a political use for her as a piece in the Game of Thrones. Might not be a very valuable piece in terms of that, which is good for her. She doesn't need to be pulled into all that, right? That's not a positive. She's like, yeah, I'm raring to play the game. Nah, she loves her job. I think she wants to stay where she is. So who knows? Who knows about her identity? Given that it's an open secret, it's hard to tell. Like, I'm guessing that Littlefinger, any open secrets that guy knows. He knows a lot of the secrets. So I kind of doubt that one slipped past him. Since Maddie, a serving girl, told Sansa, like, how quiet can this be? But it gets back to her. Michael Redfort didn't seem to hint at knowing. And maybe she doesn't either, right? Michael says, my father must have been a goat. Well, did you correct him? Did you say my father was Robert Baratheon? I don't know. It doesn't seem like she did. So it's kind of one of those things where, like, it's an open secret that's kept from her. Like, no one's told her. Which, is that credible? I think it could be. I think it's possible, but on the other hand, she knows she's called Mya Stone, and she knows that, like everybody in that world, that you don't get the bastard surname unless your parents are noble, or one of them is noble. She knows her mother isn't. So did she really just not think about it? She's like, well, my father was somebody important. Is that the end of those thoughts? Did she not dig any deeper? Did she not ask around? She's got to know other people would have met this man. Did she not ask her own mother? Right? We don't know what happened to her. If her own mother's alive, then, hey, mom, who's my dad? Right? Simple question. Like, most kids are going to ask that. So I lean towards her knowing. It's hard. It would be hard to keep that from her. And she's not 12. She's like 18. So it's a long time for that to have escaped her notice. And that's setting aside her own potential digging, her own curiosity into her own heritage. But maybe she just doesn't want to know. Maybe she's got that sort of advanced wisdom beyond her years, where she realizes that knowing isn't going to do her any good. She's like, well, if my father doesn't want to know me to know him, there might be a good reason for that. Maybe it's kind of a bitterness to it. Like, yeah, he doesn't want me, but so I don't want to know who he is. That's a Baratheon kind of stubbornness. I could see that being there. Like, she could have that level of, I don't want to know. I'm dedicated to not knowing. Screw him. I don't care. I don't want to know him. He didn't want to take care of me. I don't want to know him. The intensity of an emotion that develops like that in childhood, and you can hold on to it and cling to it and gain strength from it, or at least maintain your stubbornness. Yeah, I mean, mule personality, stag personality, Robert's child. Yeah, this kid has some ancestral stubbornness alongside her own cultivated stubbornness with the lifestyle she leads and her own attitudes. So, yeah, I wonder if her own internal stubbornness has kept her from addressing this question. You know, some sort of denial. You know, we've seen that before. Denial can be really powerful. What would she do with the knowledge that she's Robert's child? If she did know, she took it to heart, what would she do with that? Would she be proud of it? Would she be mad at Robert? Would there be, there's probably some mixed feelings. I doubt it would just be one or two emotions and that's it, right? This is a big deal, learning about your father, maybe later in life, confronting these things. So yeah, it's a fascinating question that gets into both questions of monarchy and royalty, but also just questions of humanity and parents, you know, very basic human things. So yeah, there isn't a bit of an advantage to being a woman in this spot, you know, it's in a patriarchy. It's usually not the advantages of women we speak about, but there is an advantage here, which is that, yeah, you don't want to be in the Game of Thrones. You don't want to be thrown into that mess where it's dangerous and deadly and you win or you die. If you choose to be in that, okay, that's your own consent, your own will, but you don't want to be pulled into that without your consent, without your, you know, and it doesn't seem like Mya is at all interested in that life or that part of her that possibility, that potential. She doesn't want to walk down that road. The only path she wants to walk is the narrow path that the mules walk. She's not trying to walk that golden road or that royal road, that king's road. Nope. No. So being less of a threat is probably good for her. It's probably keeping her out of harm's way. She's in grief over Michael, but I mean, this is a Song of Ice and Fire. Grief over a breakup doesn't really register very high in terms of the bad things that happen in this world. We got war, we got death, we got all sorts of awful things. What young person doesn't go through a few breakups early in life? You learn from that. It's not such a bad thing. You know, she'll be stronger for it in the long run, and it's good that she's not actually deeply involved with this guy. He's probably not a great dude. So maybe Lothor Brune isn't good for her either. After all, Lothor Brune works for Littlefinger. That's doesn't reflect terribly well on you, and that's your employer, but they'd have their own Bear and the Maiden Fair thing going if they did hook up, because she's the one with the big black hair, but House Brune is a brown bear sigil, so yeah. Anyway, the Vale in general, if we take a higher level view here, as high as honor, the Vale has been kind of separate from the rest of the realm. They've been doing their own thing. Lysa Arryn closed them off from the War of Five Kings, but that is coming to an end at some point, maybe some point pretty soon. Will Mya be relevant to that opening of the Vale? I don't know. I kind of lean towards no. I don't think she's going to go north with Sansa. That seems weird. Why would she go north? Why would she go to the Winterfell? It doesn't make sense. I just can't come up with a reason why, especially because she loves where she is already. Why would she want to go there? And if she's made to go there, for what purpose, right? I just don't understand. On the other hand, during winter, she's not making the mule runs anymore. The area, as we said, is closed for quite a while, and it's going to remain so for who knows how long. So maybe her job's a little different, right? I don't know. Her employment situation she doesn't have as much to do. I don't know. Maybe that's a reason for her to go somewhere else, but I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah. I don't see her leaving the Vale. You guys weigh in. Let me know if you have different theories about her. If she does leave the Vale, it could be in an epilogue scenario. Maybe she marries Lothor Brune. Lothor Brune was promised a castle or keep land of some sort in the Riverlands. Problem is, that was promised to him by Joffrey, by the Lannister regime. So that may not be good. That may not hold up in court, so to speak, later on. And of course, if Sweet Robin dies, if Littlefinger has him killed, and then Littlefinger himself goes away, all sorts of things could happen in the Vale while they're gone. Mya could be there while chaos happens, while the Vale army goes north. A lot of possibilities, but ultimately, I find her, of the three bastards we're going to discuss today, I find her endgame the hardest to guess at. I think, Edric is a little more tied into the potential ancestry to the royal line, to Storm's End. Gendry doesn't even know his heritage, so it's a little harder to figure where she's going in that sense, because they're all doing other things out in the world. So there's less gravity pulling her into the Game of Thrones. That doesn't mean it won't, though. I'd love to hear your ideas on Mya, on her outlook, on her character, maybe some personality traits that I missed or didn't address as thoroughly as we could have. Let us know. But in the meantime, let us move on. Gendry, the one we know the most about, the character that we have the most insight on, the one who's on screen the most. He was born in 284, not all that long after the end of Robert's rebellion, his father's rebellion, which is a reminder of how quickly Robert was out there in brothels after marrying Cersei. Right away, essentially. Yeah. And this is par for the course with Robert. He had already fathered a child during the rebellion. That's Bella, who is the fourth most known of the bastards, but we didn't really have time for 4 Baratheon bastards in this episode. This is already a lengthy one. So he wasn't going to hold back. What's going to stop him if that's what he's willing to do? He's literally fathering a child while he's being hunted by Jon Connington. And he's during the proto stages of rebellion, he's still doing that. So this man is not going to set that aside so easily. He's going to take time for his pleasures and not care much about the downside or the problems that it creates. Because again, someone else will probably take care of that for him. So his mother was a tavern wench. She died young. Gendry remembers her as blonde, that she would sing to him. The blonde is a nice little touch by George because it's yet again an example of the seed is strong. It's the coal over the gold again, right? It's one of the more subtle examples of it, but it stands just as tall when you line it up against the others. Joffrey, golden hair. Tommen, golden hair. Of course, they didn't actually have Robert as a father. But that's the point, that they would have had black hair if they did, because all the ones that Robert actually did father do have black hair. It's like a 100% rate of this. It's extremely strong genetics. And actually, Gendry looks more like Renly than he looks like Robert, partly because of the proximity in age. Gendry's closer to Renly in age at this time. As we mentioned before, Brienne, it's so much of a resemblance that Brienne is struck dumb by it. She actually says Renly, and she's like, what? And she's like, whoa, hang on, I'm feverish. That can't be Renly. But it's so overwhelming in that moment. The word actually escapes her lips. Now, Gendry does not take after his father in terms of women. He is not a womanizer. If anything, he's a little shy. We see that with Bella, of all things. It's kind of humorous that Bella maybe not flirts with him because she's actually interested, but she's a sex worker. She's flirting with a potential customer, right? Now, sex workers don't just pick any random person. They're going to have preferences like anybody else. But still, this isn't necessarily like a genuine attraction. But it's funny if it is, because they're brother and sister and don't know it, right? Bella was fathered there at the Peach. Gendry ends up at the Peach. They both have similar hair. They both have the blue eyes. But yeah, this is what, by comparing Gendry to Renly and putting him in similar situations as Robert. Now, Gendry isn't gay like Renly, but he's not out there fathering bastards or sleeping around, also like Renly, for a different reason. But he's not doing it, which makes him similar to Renly in that regard as well. But in Renly looks like a younger Robert, and Gendry looks like that. So we're kind of getting a window into what Robert looked like in his prime. He looked like a Gendry or a Renly did, but maybe a little bit bigger. But in current times, when Robert's in the story, he's no longer that. He's no longer handsome and fit like when he married Cersei. Cersei remembers him as being like the most perfect manly specimen, even though she wasn't into him in the first place. She wanted to marry Rhaegar. When she actually saw him, standing there in his armor, getting ready to get married, she's like, okay, actually. But that only lasted like an hour until he got drunk and whispered Lyanna's name in her ear. So, yeah, real quick for that one. Robert also, by not parenting Gendry, Gendry didn't witness his father's womanizing. That may have been a real turnoff, or it may have been the wrong kind of influence. He may have been like, yeah, I'm going to do that like my dad. So there's a little bit of a conspiracy theory that Gendry's mother was murdered to conceal his identity. But it doesn't seem very likely, because if you're going to do that, why not do it sooner? Why not do it like right away? If they were worried about that, you would take the chance and just let it go for a few years. Like, Gendry does have memories of her. I believe it far more likely Varys was just keeping an eye on her, maybe giving her some money to make sure she was taken care of, to make sure she didn't talk, or to bank this for later. For Varys could have a plan for Gendry down the line, a way to use this against Robert or against the Lannisters or something that fits in his long-term plan with Fagon, with young Griff. In fact, maybe even including a Gendry, maybe even Gendry or Edric Storm are part of his long-term plans. We've talked about, in other circumstances, Varys and Illyrio stashing heirs, like Tywin or like Tyrion or Tyrek for Casterly Rock. They may have a plan for Storm's End. They certainly don't not have a plan for Storm's End. You're not going to have a 20-year plan to take the throne with your hidden candidate and not consider the 7 great houses as part of that plan. Yeah. Like, oh, we kind of forgot about Storm's End. Yeah, no, this isn't David and Dan making a TV show. So, that's also good for Gendry that Cersei doesn't know who he is, because we know that when Cersei found out about Gendry, she did find out about him. She wanted him dead right away, which tells us she didn't know about it before. If she had known who he was, she would have had him killed beforehand, most likely. But she only made a move on him after Robert's death, which maybe she wasn't worried about any competing problems there. Maybe she just wasn't worried about it because her children come first, and there's no way this, blacksmith boy is going to usurp her own children. But maybe she doesn't want to take that chance. And also what we said before, it isn't just about the danger of succession stuff. Cersei murdered 2 twins that were born at Casterly Rock because Robert fathered them. I don't think she was worried about the political implications of that either. Again, it was the shame, the embarrassment that just, Robert is shaming me by having these kids. I want them gone. Again, Gendry doesn't necessarily fit into that because he was born, I guess, he was born after Cersei was married to her, but she doesn't necessarily know that, but she would assume he was. So yeah, so that puts him in danger, a danger he wasn't in until she found out. So how did she find out? Who told her? My best guess is Littlefinger, right? Littlefinger probably is like, hey, I'm Mr. Chaos. I want to cause the great houses to fight each other. I want Cersei to be distracted from what I'm doing, and there's really no one better than Cersei for causing chaos and distractions, while Littlefinger can do stuff while she's creating those distractions. So him telling her when things are falling apart, when the Civil War is getting ready to break loose, what better timing for Littlefinger to be like, hey, Robert's got a kid right here. Aren't you worried about that? Right? I mean, yeah, I think that's entirely possible. She immediately had Bera killed then too. And she didn't have that done before. So yeah, this all came out when things started to slip into a succession crisis situation. Now, going back to Gendry's life when his mother passed, let's say Varys took over from that point and said, okay, his mother's no longer raising him. He probably judged his mother wasn't a problem. It's like, okay, she is smart enough to keep it quiet. She is wise enough to understand that blaring out loud who this boy's father is not unlikely to get him killed. That is not in your child's best interest. She's one of those mothers that is not going to use this boy as leverage or ambition. She cares about the kid and will mother him in secret so that his parentage doesn't come out, because that's bad for him. So she comes off, even though she's nameless, faceless, she comes off as one of the good ones. Unlike Bera, who is not a bad one, she's a naive one. More on her in a minute. She didn't know to keep quiet, is my point. But Gendry's mother apparently did, and that's why they seemingly let her be. But when she died, Varys had to step in and be like, hey, we need to make sure this kid is... Well, what was Varys's angle here? Is he a stash? Edric Storm hadn't been born yet when he first sent Gendry over to Tobho Mott, apparently, or maybe not. We don't know the exact timeline here, but it looks like Gendry has been with Tobho Mott for perhaps as long as a decade, as apprentice smith for that long. So, let's delve a little deeper into this because it's pretty interesting, but let's also back up and get some setup stuff done here. First appearance for Gendry. Basically, Ned is following Jon Arryn's footsteps, trying to track down the same information that Jon Arryn was, trying to see if that's what got him killed, and what else is at the end of this trail. And it leads him to Gendry, among other things. So, Ned is already knowledgeable about Robert having bastards. He knows. He's seen them. He's seen Mya. He's seen others. He thinks about them. Ned isn't a super clever guy, but there's just no mistaking Robert's look, and it's extremely familiar to him. He grew up with Robert. Robert's his best friend. They were teenagers together. I mean, this is extremely familiar to him. Now, here's that really important scene where we meet Gendry and Tobho Mott, and it's just a wonderful exchange between people who actually care about a child rather than using them as ambition. And you see this wonderful moment of mutual respect. Quote,
"The master called over a tall lad about Rob's age, his arms and chest corded with muscle. 'This is Lord Stark, the new hand of the king. he told him, as the boy looked at Ned through sullen blue eyes and pushed back sweat-soaked hair with his fingers. Thick hair, shaggy and unkempt, and black as ink. The shadow of a new beard darkened his jaw. Hard to imagine that because we had such short, cropped-haired Gendry.
Yeah, right? Yeah,
like, oh, yeah, he had messy, big hair, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, as to repeat what I said in the intro, Ned is not even for a second going to think, well, maybe it's Stannis or Renly's bastard. Yeah, no way. Stannis, no. Renly, even more nope. Well, I don't know. Both just so nope, it's just major nope on both of them.
Yeah, I mean, Renly could have had one just because he's trying to overcompensate for things. It's like, weirdly more possible for Renly than Stannis.
But it wouldn't be an 18-year-old.
No.
Because Renly was 5 when Gendry was born, right?
Prodigious talent.
Yeah. He's a stag. He's ready to go. Yeah, rutting at 6. There's also some dark humor here besides the humor we just dropped there. Gendry has seen Robert. He's like, that's drunken king. He almost got run over by his horse. Gendry almost got run over by Robert's horse. And he's like, that dude's a drunk. You're right, Gendry. He is. He's just also your dad. So in this scene, Ned figures out that Gendry doesn't know who his father is. But he's concerned about Tabba Mott. He's like, what is this Tabba Mott character all about? Is this guy really the man that should be guarding Gendry? What's his take? Does he have an angle? Is he trying to manipulate? Is he trying to play the game? But Ned asks a few pointed questions and drops his worry quickly. He sees, this guy is the true steal. He's like, this guy has Gendry's best interests at heart. And that must be difficult for Ned to figure. He gets, I think, that Varys arranged all this, but he doesn't understand Varys' angle. Frankly, neither do I. There's a streak of Varys that really seems like he actually cares about some of these kids. He also is willing to do awful things to children like the little birds. But one of the real most poignant pieces of evidence, character evidence, for Varys himself being a noble bastard that was abandoned is that he has pretty well documented concern for some of these bastards. Like, why does he care about Gendry if he's got an Edric, or if he's got... Why does he send Gendry to the Night's Watch if he wants to stash him as a claimant? That's the worst place to put somebody. That you've forsaken your name. It doesn't work that way, right? You know, a king can undo your vows like that, but if you're the one with the king's blood, are you going to legitimize yourself? I don't know. It doesn't seem to fit. It seems like there actually is a soft spot Varys has here for people like this, which is part of why people like myself think he might be a person like that himself. He might be some heir, Blackfire or otherwise. Now, that's really getting into Varys territory, though. So let's bring it back to Gendry. And Tabba Mott, just like Ned is like, is this Tabba Mott guy going to take good care of Gendry? He realizes, yes. Meanwhile, Tabba Mott has the same concern. Let's not forget, we're seeing it through Ned's eyes. And that's one of the things that Ned realizes, that Tabba is checking him out, too. And Ned's like, you're checking out whether I'm going to do bad things. He's hiding Gendry from me, which is good. Like, he's not giving this kid's identity up even to me, even when being pressed. That's exactly what I wanted to see, Tabba Mott. You're a good man. So they both kind of like it. It's kind of like that knowing nod. You're like, this guy knows what's up. I'm on his team. We're on the same team here, even though they're never going to interact again, probably. Like, I like this guy. He likes me. Passing ships in the night. Respect. Move on. There's no ulterior motive. They both realize that of the other. Now, they both have Gendry's best interest in mind, which is, they would not have expected that. That's not the default you expect. You expect ambition. You expect someone to be out for themselves. So they're like, that's why they got to ask these questions. That's why they got to be sure. There's an extra level of cleverness in Varys is stashing him with Tabba Mott here. And let's remember, it was Varys for sure that did this. What I mean by that is, blacksmiths are one of the most valued common-born professions, right? If you don't have high birth or station or wealth, blacksmith is one of the best professions you can have. It's generally a man's profession, but because it keeps you alive, you're valuable. armies that would normally kill anyone that has no value to them. Well, blacksmiths have great value to them. Even the bloody mummers won't kill a smith. Even like Dothraki would think twice about that, right? That's just the most valuable kind of person you can have if you are a guy with armies. You need horseshoes, swords, armor, fixing all of the above, etc. That literally happens. Gendry would have been killed by the bloody mummers and or by Roose Bolton, but in both cases they're like, oh, you're a smith? Step over to the not going to be killed, tortured, or assaulted line, and, you know, we'll pull you aside. You get better treatment. Not good treatment, but better treatment. And of course, he had already made that helmet, the bull's head helm, which was kind of his resume, right? People are like, who are you? What's your deal? They don't look at him and think blacksmith. They don't doubt it when they hear it, though, because he's big and muscular. Like, oh, yeah, okay, that tracks. Yeah, okay. And he's also strong. He maybe showed that promise, like, look at the size of this kid. Or maybe it's Robert's kid. He's probably going to grow up strong. Maybe it was a bit of prediction. Because again, we don't know when his mother died. His mother, but probably pretty young because he doesn't have much of a memory of her. So Varys wouldn't have been going out on too much of a limb thinking this kid will be perfectly comfortable wielding a hammer in a non-combat situation. Donal Noy, Hugh Hammer, things like that, or Hugh Hammer's father, you know. Now, Tobho Mott would have also been clocked by Varys as a man trustworthy in this spot. Something that Varys did long before Ned figured this out. Varys did it. But Varys had to act after Robert's death. That level of protection was no longer enough. Maybe he knew Littlefinger would tell. Maybe one of his agents overheard Littlefinger telling. Maybe it was just too much of a risk. And so he had Gendry sent to the Night's Watch. He had to have come to Tobho, the guy who was his caretaker for maybe as long as a decade, and be like, hey man, good job apprenticing Gendry, but his life is in danger. And you probably know why. We don't have to say, because Tobho would have figured something out all over these years. He doesn't necessarily know he's Robert's son, but he could have figured it out pretty easily. Like, what noble-born kid needs to be hidden that much? It's really only the kings that this comes up with. Like, you don't have to hide Tywin Lannister's bastard. You don't have to hide Ned Stark's. Well, he didn't have any, but you don't have to hide him if you did. Ned Stark pretended to have a bastard. That's why it worked, because it's not a big deal. It is a big deal when you're a king. When you're a king's son, queen's son, maybe, but not, it's a dramatically less even amongst the high lords, especially when they already have large families. So Tobho presumably was like, yep, okay, I believe you. You were the man who brought me this guy. Back in my mind, I've always figured this kid was a king's son. If he didn't explicitly know, he understands that Robert has just died. It's obvious in that you don't need much explanation in that sense why this kid would be in danger. It was also a bit of a fake out within the fandom. Now, a lot of y'all came along after a lot of the books were out. My first one was A Storm of Swords. Now, before A Storm of Swords, I learned that there was a lot of theories that Gendry and Donal Noy would become buddies. Because Gendry's a smith. He's going to the wall. Donal Noy's the smith at Castle Black. Donal Noy made Robert's Warhammer. Oh, he's going to recognize him, right? That really was a strong theory, but obviously it did not come to play. Not only did Gendry not go to the wall, but Donal Noy is now dead. And let's not forget, Donal made Robert's Warhammer. He wasn't just a smith at Storm's End. He actually made Robert's Warhammer. So with those skills and all that other overlap, it could have been a really interesting conversation, but it, never happened. The Bull. Let's talk about his time on the road after leaving King's Landing. He spends a lot of time mostly with Arya, but also Yoren, Hot Pie, and then Rorge and Biter and Jake and Hagar. One of these others that's in the group of Night's Watch recruits is a guy named Praed. He dies on the way, and Yoren allocates Praed's sword to Gendry because he's like, well, you're big. You're most of who we're recruiting here don't look very warrior-like, so we'll give you the sword. And there's that awkward yet revealing moment that comes shortly after this where the Gold Cloaks arrive, and they're coming for Gendry. And Arya thinks they're coming for her. And Arya's really confused why they'd be coming for Gendry. Yoren, however, knows they're coming for Gendry because he was probably told, he was at the last minute, he's like, hey, here's this kid. Yoren is old enough to know what Robert looks like and to catch this and to understand that something is going on here. A last minute hooded man saying, hey, take this boy with you. Well, okay. That's curious. I think he figured it out. Cersei knew who he was, wanted him dead, and it was her signed letter saying, bring this kid back. Yoren knew what they were about. Yoren's like, nah, I'm not giving this kid up to die. He's in the Night's Watch now. And of course, we know what happened with that. The Gold Cloaks ran off, came back with Sir Amory Lorch, and there was the battle and the holdfast. Yoren and the Night's Watch recruits try to defend themselves. They have to run away. Gendry does kill a guy along with Arya and company, and then they escape. They are captured by Gregor's men not long after, and that's when he's spared because he's a smith. He's given over to the smithy at Harrenhal, where he remains and actually advances more in his training. He was about to forge his first sword in King's Landing when everything came crashing down and he got sent away. But he does work on swords at Harrenhal. His skill set advances. He learns from the master there, and that is where he stays until Arya talks him into leaving. She convinces him that he's going to be maimed. That may not have been true, but in general, she was probably right that leaving was a good idea, that it wouldn't go well for him if he stayed. He wears armor when he shows back up, maybe something that he made or worked on, and he brings his hammer. He's got a little, forge hammer with him, plus some swords that he distributes to them. Of course, they're on the road for a little while, and then they're captured by the Brotherhood Without Banners. Captured, but treated well. Hot Pie joins, immediately. He's like, yeah, let's go. He joins the cell, the Brotherhood Without Banners cell, calling him like a terrorist cell, yeah, at the end of the Kneeling Man, right, which is one of their fronts, and makes good bread there. Hey, nothing like, you gotta have a resistance movement, has to be well fed, right? They got better bread now. Meanwhile, Gendry and Arya move on to the Hollow Hill, where they meet Beric Dondarrion and watch Sandor fight him. Meaning they witness real, true magic. We see the scene through Arya's point of view. It's moving and powerful and haunting, and our reactions come through her, but Gendry sees everything she does. And he is quite struck. This is a man that lost his role and is, a young man looking for a place in society, a place in the world, doesn't have a family, so to speak, but this is a brotherhood. This is a family in a sense. And he sees how they operate. He sees that they're trying to help people. He sees that they're for the people, not for the lords. He's all about that. He's like, sign me up. He appreciates the way they attack outlaws. He appreciates the way they take on the Brotherhood, the Bloody Mummers. He likes the way Lord Beric is honorable and the way he leads in general. He wants to be a part of that. Let's take a quick break, or a little roughly halfway-ish point, and then we'll come back with more about Gendry, and then we'll move on to Edric Storm and the group of them. Ashea, we have something cool to discuss here. We have been in this business for a while, and editing has always been a big part of what we have to do as a podcast, both video and audio podcast editing. And we've used a variety of tools for that. Lately, the technology has improved to a point where it is amazing. So I'm going to let Ashea take over and give you a little demonstration of what we've been doing with some of our older episodes, and give you a demonstration of how the old ones sound versus how they sound after using this software, Alphonic.
Yeah, absolutely. This is when we remaster an old episode, we thought it would be great for you guys to hear the difference. So I clipped out a little brief thing. This is from Blackfire Rebellion, Part 1, Aegon the Unworthy, which is, over a decade ago now, 2015. And we'll drop the link to that as well. But here, take a listen, everybody.
Former rider of Tessarion, the Blue Queen. That's a great name. I love that name.
I do too.
Obviously, that's the name of a dragon if you haven't read The Princess and the Queen.
Former rider of Tessarion, the Blue Queen. That's a great name. I love that name.
I do too.
Obviously, that's the name of a dragon if you haven't read The Princess and the Queen.
That's it. I just did a quick snippet, but you can probably hear a huge difference, and it's amazing. We love Alphonic. You can use it to do multi-track editing. So like when I do episodes with Aziz, me and Sean, I put each of our audio track in there, and it can edit them separately. You can do automatic cutting with it, where it can cut out your ums. It cuts out mouth sounds, all those, lip sounds and all of that, just mouth noises that we don't like. So if you would like to try it out, they do give you, I think, like 2 hours free, but also the link is in the description, and I'll say it aloud. It's alphonic.com, AUPHONIC.com, !source equals History of Westeros. That's our affiliate link for it. And we just really like this product, so we were happy to get approved for their affiliate program because we use it for every episode. It's really changed our workflow. My life is so much better with this product, y'all. Like, I can't sing its praises enough.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Y'all heard just from the demonstration, I'm sure, but it's... imagine what it can do on a new episode. That is a 11-year-old episode that's remastered. It wasn't originally recorded using some of this tech, so it's even better that way. But it makes old, poorly recorded stuff sound like it's made in a advanced studio. So whether you're doing something like this professionally or just on the side for fun, it's really as far as we know, it's the best you can do for audio quality these days. Cannibal the Dragon says, if Robert's parents are dead, why is Robert still in the Vale? Why was he still in the Vale after they die? He was there when the rebellion started. Yeah.
I put an answer here for him. Can I read it?
Go for it. Yeah, we got an answer straight from George.
Yeah. This is per the So Spake Martin. He said, and this is starting, he's talking about Ned Stark. He says, and once he reached the age of 16, he was a man grown, free to come and go as he liked, which would have included both time at home and in the Vale, since Jon Arryn had become a second father. The same was true of Robert, who divided his time between Storm's End and the Vale after reaching manhood, not to mention dropping in on tourneys and whatever choice fights he could find. I thought I wanted to include this just because it gives some good context to what Robert's doing and why he's maybe flitting about. Just good to have a So Spake Martin on the subject.
Yeah, ultimately, the simpler version of that answer is because he was Lord of Storm's End and could do what he wanted.
Yeah.
And Robert did what he wanted before he was Lord of Storm's End. So, yeah, this is just, he was even more empowered to do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. Good question, though, because that is I've seen that asked elsewhere before, and it is a little bit of a curiosity. Why didn't he just, live full-time at Storm's End after he became Lord? Yeah, but the answer is simple.
It's boring. Think about
he wanted to.
Think about Duncan Egg, Lionel Baratheon. He didn't sound so thrilled about just going back to boring old Storm's End.
He's hunting and hawking. Yeah, that's the most fun we'll have. Yeah. So Sir Gendry, as a member of the Brotherhood Without Banners, he's knighted along with the rest by R'hllor and Lord Beric, as it happens, right? So he's Sir Gendry of the Hollow Hill. It's certainly unorthodox, but any knight can make a knight, so that's that. Case closed. And he does eventually start to prefer the Lord of Light to the Seven, in part because the example of the men who introduced him to the Lord of the Light. It's not Melisandre. That's why Edric is like, I don't know about switching. More on him later, of course. But Gendry, his authority figures, his influences, the people influencing him, the people he's looking up to, Thoros, Beric, maybe some of the other Brotherhood, they're all worshiping the Lord of Light now. They're all R'hllorists. And he saw the Lord of Light's power firsthand, which is part of what brings Baratheons along, right? That's what brought Stannis along. He's like, actually, she's got real power. I can't deny that. I just saw her do stuff magically. I haven't seen the Seven do any magic. Gendry, maybe a little bit of that same attitude. I'm a show don't tell guy. Tell me there's magic, okay. I'm not going to do anything about that unless you prove it. He got proof. He saw Beric cut from neck to collarbone, through the collarbone, and then 20 minutes later, he's walking around again. He lit the sword on fire with his blood. But it's not just the magic, right? Again, it's the character, even more so. Beric's style of leading, brave, noble, putting himself at risk. This is what Gendry appreciates and approves and is his. That's where he lands. Gendry has true knight vibes. I'm not sure y'all recall where he finishes the story, where we're at right now. I mean, he's defending the weak like a true knight, and he is a knight. He smiths at the end of the crossroads, and he's kind of co-managing that front with Willow Heddle and helping to protect the orphans. He stations himself with the orphans. I mean, he is kind of one too, so he gets it. He's like their champion in a sense. Like, that's great, right? Sir Gendry, good for him. By the way, Brienne notices Gendry, of course, we'll talk about this in a second, and have talked about how he looks like Renly to her. And Brienne wonders about Willow Heddle if she's Arya. No. But, you know, because Gendry having run with Arya for a while, it's not the worst guess ever. But yeah, but no. Now, this is something interesting I find about George. He doesn't have kids of his own, but he understands things like this as well as any author I've ever read. How easily kids can be influenced by their elders, how they look up to them, how they do what they do. They want to follow their footsteps.
Well, two things. One, he was a kid.
He was his own.
We've met his nephew and his family, so he certainly has children that he has spent time with.
That's a good point.
You know, and all that.
Yeah, he has sisters that had kids. That's a good point. Yeah, very good point. So it's not just pure insight. It is some living experience. So Tobho Mott was the closest thing Gendry had to a father for a long time. But then suddenly he's like, nope, you got to leave King's Landing. And Gendry probably didn't have the full story explained to him. You know, he couldn't tell him it's because you're the king's bastard and your Cersei wants to kill you. They didn't tell him that. So what story did they tell him? We don't know, but it wasn't something that would make him happy. He probably feels like, well, this sucks. I had my place, I had my father figure. Now suddenly I got to leave. So he lands with the BWB. It's a new purpose. It's a new family. It's, again, brotherhood. You know, like that's as close to a family as an orphan can get. It's a purpose. It's something to belong to. Don't underrate that. It's a big deal. Other people depend on him. He depends on them. It's a circle. He's protecting and being protected. He's learning and teaching. He's doing right by them and having right done by him, even though he's in a precarious situation. He's technically an outlaw by a lot of people's judgment. He's not a full-grown adult, but he's already a better man than his father by a mile, by miles. Though his father's physical gifts have definitely helped. Inheriting those was a big boon to him, but not much else, right? In fact, the else almost got him killed. Being his father's son almost got him killed. And though I'm saying his position is very precarious, it's also very interesting. Consider this. Stoneheart. That's his boss now. He doesn't run with her because he's at the Inn of the Kneeling Man day to day while she's going place to place and running things from behind the scenes and from their various hidey holes and caves. But she would have interviewed him, for lack of a better word. Maybe that is the best word. Because everyone knows Gendry and Arya traveled together, and we know Stoneheart's looking for Arya, so she would want every piece of information out of him. She would also clock that he liked her and that he protected her, and that might put him in even better standing with Stoneheart as far as she's able to have feelings like that and judgments like that. It's a little unclear what she's capable of, but probably pretty capable, given Beric was capable of a lot of these things too. Her problem just is lack of being able to talk. So that keeps some of the mystery alive there. But I have to think that he's one of her most trusted because of that. Like just his credibility alongside Arya and helping her and running with her, just being alive with her, you know, keeping her safe to a certain extent. Yeah. So if Stoneheart and Arya have a reunion, Gendry could be right there too. And Arya might be more pleased to see him than her undead mother. And maybe that leads to future connections between Arya and Gendry. I'm not sure a relationship is in the offing. Could be. But certainly firing their friendship back up again, their connection seems not unlikely. But she is not one of the ones who knows who he is. That could change their dynamic a little bit, finding out who he was. That could be a moment of humor for them. They'd be like, you know what? All along, you were Ned Stark's son, and that was hidden. She eventually finds out. He eventually finds out about that. And then he starts to act out a little bit, right? He's like, oh, all you highborns, because Edric Dane is there too. And he's like, oh, you lords and ladies. Oh, he's like, starts to feel like he doesn't belong. And Arya never like holds it over him. He's more just kind of feeling something that isn't being done. Neither does Edric Dane. Neither of them taunt him or any of that stuff. Not about his birth anyway. Arya will argue with him and taunt him about other stuff, call him stupid or whatever. But it isn't status based, right? Arya isn't really like that. Arya doesn't see herself as superior because she's a Stark. A little bit maybe, but not in a typical way at all. So
I kind of think Arya thinks she's superior just because she's superior, like on her own merits.
She thinks she's
not
a better,
even cause,
but not because she's a Stark, just because
she's better than them. Yeah, I don't know. That's my take.
I think that's probably closer to it. I think that's a good way to put it. So they have some things in common. They're both very stubborn, but it would be funny for them to both learn later that, hey, you were Lord Stark's daughter and hiding that and pretending to be a boy. Meanwhile, all this time I was King Robert's son. And your father and my father were best friends, you know, like that, because the TV show did bring that out with Jon and Gendry, and I don't know that that'll ever happen in the books, but definitely the people Ned's children being friends with Robert's children, that's kind of fun. Varys obviously knows. Cersei knows now because because Littlefinger probably told her, and if Littlefinger told her, then obviously he knows too. Yeah. So I'm not sure many other people do, because Brienne saw the resemblance, but she didn't go any farther than that. She's like, oh, he looks like Renly, but he can't be Renly. And then she just sets it aside. She doesn't go any farther and go, you know what? Maybe that's a Baratheon bastard. That thought doesn't cross her mind. Tab Omad, of course, as we said, he probably knows, and he's probably still alive. I'm not sure that he's someone that will be brought back into it as a verification, because if it ever comes up, the verification is not really needed. Gendry looks so much like Robert, and as he gets older, he probably look even more like Robert. Now, of course, bringing it back, Gendry had that almost sex scene with his own sister, who's also Robert's daughter. So there's all sorts of, again, the more in-jokes with their identities, and for us. And Arya's best friend amongst her own family is Jon. She just has a thing for royal bastards that no one knows are royal bastards, or few people know that they don't know, and she doesn't know. So that's just, I don't know, something about Arya. She's drawn to that without knowing it, and them neither. The other gigantic irony of Gendry's identity and him being a part of the Brotherhood Without Banners is they're kingsmen. They're like, we continue our job. We're doing what the king sent us out to do. This guy is son of that king. They would totally follow him, promote him, exhort him, just be like, this is the son of the guy we were following, the man whose existence we owe our existence to. Even though it was really more Ned. But still, Ned gave the order in Robert's name and all that. They have Robert's son in their midst and have no idea. It's pretty funny, even with Thoros looking into the flames and all that. He never saw it. It's still a mystery to him. It didn't clock this. And this gets at why he's Gendry and not Gendry Waters. I promised I'd explain that at the beginning. Here we go. It's not just that Robert never acknowledged him. That is a big deal. But Mya is Mya Stone without that open acknowledgement. That's more the open secret acknowledgement that she's Mya Stone. So the acknowledgement is only a question if the mother is noble. At least that seems to be what George implies. So in Mya's case, it's some sort of halfway measure. Not typical, but an open enough secret that she gets the name. If Robert had let it known who Gendry was, then he would be Gendry Waters, even without the acknowledgement. If it was known, like in Mya Stone's case, he would get that name. It's a legal thing and not just an announcement. It's both. It's a legal thing and an announcement. It can go both ways. But the point is, there was no announcement, and there was no acknowledgement, and there's no open secret. So it's also possible Robert didn't know Gendry existed, because when he finds out, he's like, she named the kid Bera? What was that supposed to please me? And then this is very infuriating for Robert to say and Ned gets mad at him for saying it. He's like, dude, this was a virgin sex worker. What do you think? She's some wise, font of wisdom here? Like, what do you think? Of course she's naive and is going to do unpredictable things and maybe fall in love with you and try to honor her as the king with the naming the kid Bera. That was not smart of her to do. It was unwise. But Robert thinks she should have known better. Like, what? Come on, Robert. You should have known better. You're the man with the power and the agency. She's the naive girl that's like her first day at work here. Ugh. Anyway, so yeah, understandably why Ned got mad at Robert for that. It's like, is shirking responsibility, and there's that, which is just another level of denial and shirking responsibility. It's really just, damn, Robert. So anyway, in theory, he could become Sir Gendry Waters if his identity becomes known. But it seems, while it seems not unlikely, it's also kind of like, well, how will it be proven? How will this knowledge circulate? How will it get out? It's kind of a similar question with Jon's identity, right? Like, if Jon is outed as Rhaegar's son, well, how does that spread? How does that knowledge spread, and why would people believe it? With Gendry, it's maybe a little easier because he looks like Robert. Jon Snow does not look like Rhaegar. Not even a little. So that's a little bit of a bigger hill to climb, perhaps, but yeah. Now, earlier I said Brienne didn't clock his bastardy, but she might have been on the track of it. She might have it in the back of her mind. It may come up later because she started to ask. She started to ask about his ancestry, but George did the old interruption trick. The conversation that might be revealing and illuminating to both characters and readers is cut short because of the gosh darn Bloody Mummers. Well, a splinter group of former Bloody Mummers led by Rorge. Brienne goes out, no chance, no choice, which, by the way, Gendry had to respect that, being that he's there doing the same thing, protecting these kids. And of course, Gendry steps up. Rorge fights Brienne. Brienne wins, takes a lot of damage. Then Biter shows up to get revenge and starts doing awful things to Brienne, literally eating her face. And then Gendry stabs him in the back of the throat and kills him. Good job, Gendry. So that's really it for him. I mean, that's where we last see him. We've discussed his knowledge about Arya and how that is a very interesting point with him and Stoneheart. As far as future outlook, well, we'll come back to it when we discuss all of their outlooks as a whole, but unless his identity gets revealed, his outlook has nothing to do with his parentage. But maybe that comes out. What if he and Arya get reunited? We just talked about that a second ago. I think that is very possible, if not unlikely. Not because the show did it, but just because it could fit for a number of other reasons. The show isn't a negative in that regard as far as predicting that possibility, but the show does not help us very much with these characters in general. As you know, Edric wasn't even in it. Mya wasn't even in it. I mean, some of Edric was rolled into Gendry, so even him is different. He's Gendric. But the big question I have, a big curiosity I have, is if Arya and Gendry are reunited, is it after his identity is known? So when they become in each other's presence again, is it after Gendry is revealed as Robert's son? Is it after he's Gendry Waters? It's like, oh, hey, all along you were King's son. How about that? And then we can have those funny conversations that we discussed the possibility of a minute ago. Now, before we go on to Edric's storm, let's talk a little bit about the other 13 of Robert's bastards. There's not a whole lot to say because mostly they're unknowns. Now, we don't know who the second child was, but Gendry and Bella were fathered within 4 years of Mya's birth. So Bella, a little more about her. She was fathered by Robert while he was hiding in Stony Sept at the outset of the rebellion. She'd be about 17 now. So, a year or so older than Gendry, younger than Mya, of course. I love this little joke. Connington, because he's a rigid, Stannis-like man who is just doesn't have a sex life at all. Not for the same reasons as Stannis. It's in his case, he's like a I don't know, in the closet gay man. I don't exactly know, but he doesn't think about it very much. And so he's not on Robert's train of thought. When he was trying to find Robert in Stony Sept, he should have started and focused his searches on the brothels instead of just a generic search. It's like, if you knew Robert at all, you would... Nope, wrong. The wrong man for the job, John Connington. During all that, Robert fathers Bella. She has blue eyes and big black hair. Not shy, perhaps even content with her life. Hard to say. As a sex worker, like a lot of people in service industry, you pretend to be enjoying your job to get better tips or results. You don't it might even be true, but you can't necessarily tell just by their outer exterior. It's not unusual in Westerosi or SOC society, Nina writes, for the daughters of sex workers to become sex workers themselves, even if they have aristocratic fathers, even if they're born in a brothel from a tryst or a visitor, or, a noble-born visitor. It's just normal enough. It happens enough that this has become sort of normal. It's hinted, of course, we've talked about it a few times, that Murray and Dancy at Chataya's brothel are Tywins, if not some other Lannister. The sailor's wife in Bravos has a daughter named Lana, who is also a sex worker and maybe Geryon Lannister's descendant. And Robert, in terms of Bella, like, she's much lower born. She's not, this isn't quite the high-end brothel the same way. It's not a Chataya's. But Bella didn't have options socially or economically. She's got this kid. She's kind of smitten by Robert, but it has these naive expectations. Nina says Bella's a bit like Glendon Ball / Flowers' sister in the Mystery Night, which, to refresh your memory, Glendon was encouraged by his mother and the other sex workers to believe that he was Quentin Ball's son, but it's not that likely, given that his mother slept with a whole bunch of people, and it could be any of them that was the father. Fireball is just one of many. And Bella, just like Glendon Ball has been told the story of his potential origin and the Blackfires and about his potential father, Bella has been told the story of the Battle of the Bells, her own origin story. She knows that she was fathered during a war. So, quite interesting there. Nice little parallels. Now, Glendon takes pride in something that he maybe doesn't actually have, but it's working for him anyway. And that's the difference. Glendon doesn't really look like Quentin Ball, doesn't really look like Fireball, whereas Bella just clearly does. Just blatantly, obviously, black hair, blue eyes, all that. Now, Bera, of course, we mentioned briefly there. Bera was killed on orders of Cersei, on orders of Janos Slynt by Alar Deen. Bera's mother, again, was a virgin. She was smitten, foolishly called the kid after Robert. And as I've already explained why Robert's reaction to this was really gross, the lack of responsibility, less than zero, really. He's fine with his own ignorance, but is upset with the ignorance of the teenage virgin sex worker, right? And Varys mentions that he saved Gendry. He doesn't say it by name. He doesn't say Gendry by name, but he mentions saving Gendry, but is legitimately, or seemingly legitimately, surprised. You never can be too sure with Varys, but I believe him on this one. He's surprised Cersei had Bera killed. He just doesn't see what the angle was. He doesn't see the point. On one hand, it's the reason why I think maybe Varys is lying is because Varys is such a good judge of character. We really have misjudged Cersei there. But on the other hand, what's his angle here? Why does he, Cersei killed Bera. It's not my fault. It's not his fault. I mean, he does seem to be taking some responsibility for it, though, because he's kind of like, I maybe should have seen that coming. He saw it coming for Gendry. Maybe he just, he didn't think the girl was a threat. The boy was, maybe, the boy that looks like Robert, this girl, who knows, maybe there's time still, but it's pretty bad. It's kind of Nina points out how it's kind of an awful parallel replay of what happened to Elia and Rhaegar's children during Robert's Rebellion. Robert tacitly approved their murders without saying he wanted it done. It was kind of wink, wink. We need those kids to die. and not for Robert to be responsible, right? That's just kind of the gross behind the scenes wink, nudge, nudge kind of non-conversation conversation. So, yeah. And then it's a replay of that. Like, yeah, 15 years after his own rebellion, his own kid is torn from his mother's breast and have them both killed. As I mentioned before, Robert fathered twins on a serving girl at Casterly Rock. Cersei had them killed and the mother sold into slavery, which is illegal. But she did it anyway. She got away with it because she's a Lannister. There's 9 others, right? That's not the full count, right? That's 7 we just named, and there's 9 more. We don't know any names or any circumstances. We got nothing whatsoever. 9 is enough that maybe we'll see more. All 9. Nah, no way. We won't see all of them. Just kind of like Aegon the Unworthy had some bastards even we never knew about. Robert, having a lot in common with Aegon the Unworthy, is probably going to be in that same batch. The only reason we have this precise count of 16 is because of magic, because Maggy the Frog said so. So, yeah. Nope. I don't think Maggy the Frog was going to give that same prophecy about the specifics of these children. Edric Storm, our third and final of the scions of Robert that we discuss. He's the last we see of the 3. He's actually mentioned a lot, though. He comes up in a Game of Thrones. He comes up in a Clash of Kings, but we actually don't see him till a Storm of Swords. Now, he's the one of the 3 who, for an absolute certainty, knows who his father was, and everybody else knows too. It is not a secret, not an open secret. It is just open. So for him, we're not going to have a who knows discussion section here. It's everyone. But there is perhaps additional room for speculation on how he could fit into the story as a claimant. He has a leg up there because it's known and because he's noble on both sides, which is a two-edged sword, I suppose. Mostly it's better for Edric, but the bastard prejudice can be worse when you're noble because you are a threat. Gendry's not a threat, right? Because nobody knows about his claim. And even if he had the claim, he's less of a threat than a nobly born, nobly raised kid. It's kind of along that same spectrum as Mya is the least dangerous politically because of her mule girlness, both the girl and the mule part. Whereas Gendry's in the middle because he's got the same kind of common born stuff, the blacksmith stuff, who he was raised by. Edric, no, he was raised by other nobles. He's been around them all his life. He's had the noble's education, even though he's got that slightly reduced status. He still had the same upbringing in terms of education and opportunity. Not so much in terms of status amongst the nobility, but yeah, anyway. Let's advance to his. Well, actually, one more point here. The bastard prejudice is also manifests in awkward ways, like Selyse believes Edric's existence cursed her womb. I mean, this is a woman that is prone to all sorts of flights of fancy, so I guess we can't put this one past her or be too surprised. But it's another just frustrating example of how the child is blamed for the actions of the adult. The woman takes the next most blame when the man is by far the one who should have 99% of the blame, I suppose, but gets only 1% of it. Yeah, super backwards, y'all.
Well, is she not blaming Robert for it?
No, she's blaming Edric.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I mean,
Edric,
she blames Robert, too. You're right. She blames Robert, but she blames Edric more.
But I mean, I have to say, like, not to go to bat for Selyse, but assuming you live in a world where superstitions are real.
Yeah.
And you believe in them. This happens on your wedding night in your wedding bed, and then you have this bad luck. It's not crazy. Yeah. It's not a crazy,
not so crazy
thing.
It would be less crazy if she was less crazy. Like, if she had only that one crazy belief, it would be a lot easier to be like, yeah. Because you're right. Like, curses and stuff, people believe in that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess my point is she's not, like, far from the norm here. I think lots of noble women could think
in general, she is, but not on this.
Yeah.
I think that's true, yeah. She's not normal, but she's not as far from the norm. All right, Edric's first appearance. It's great. Edric he's funny. He's a lot more entertaining in a lot of ways. I really like this kid. And so does Davos, as we'll see here in this first quote when we meet him.
He had turned to cough into his gloved hand when another small shape crashed out of the hedge and bowled right into him, knocking him off his feet. The boy went down as well, but he was up again almost at once. "What are you doing here?" he demanded as he brushed himself off. Jet black hair fell to his collar, and his eyes were a startling blue. "You shouldn't get in my way when I'm running."
No.
Davos agreed.
I shouldn't. It's pretty funny. You shouldn't get in my way when I'm running. Like, yeah, it's true. I mean,
that's a little noble right there.
That's a noble. I have the right of way at all times, even when you can't see me coming.
Yeah, out of a hedge. He wasn't just like, you couldn't have
appeared as if from nowhere.
Yeah.
It's damn funny. It's a really great introduction because he immediately shows his privilege, but he also immediately shows his concern. Davos starts coughing, and Edric's like, "Hey, are you okay? Should I get the maester?" That's good. You know, he's a little haughty, but that's good nature. Immediately not necessarily Robert-like in that sense. Robert's good in a lot of ways, but not this kind of good. And obviously Robert's bad in a lot of other ways. As I've been very clear about this episode, Edric asks, he's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm Sir Davos Seaworth," which prompts a very egg-like line. He's like, "Are you certain? You don't look very knightly." "Are you certain?" Yes. "Are you sure you're a knight? Did you mistake that somehow?" It's like, did they really say knight and not, neat or, I don't know. What did you? But then he's like, "I'm Sir Davos, the Knight of the Onions." He's like, "Oh, I've heard of you." He knows that story. And he introduces himself here. Quote,
"The boy drew himself up tall. 'I am Edric Storm,' he announced, 'King Robert's son.'"
"Of course you are."
Davos had known that almost at once. The lad had the prominent ears of a Florent, but the hair, the eyes, the jaw, the cheekbones, those were all Baratheon.
Poor Robert, really. I mean, the guy just wants to father a bunch of bastards and be left in peace, but his genetics are so strong that he just can't escape the proof. Poor Robert. Yeah, I know you all feel really bad for Robert. I'm building this case here throughout the episode that Robert's the real victim here. Ha! Yeah. Please don't think that I was anything other than sarcastic there. Yeah, anyway. So, Edric, of course, is immediately, given how much he worships and idolizes his father, immediately wants to know, "Davos, did you know my father?" But Robert didn't really. He knew him from afar, heard him talk, but didn't know him personally. Sorry, Davos didn't know Robert personally, yeah. But Edric actually did somewhat. So Edric actually knew Robert more than Davos did. Edric actually got to train with Robert a little bit, and Varys would send presents to Storm's End every year, marked as if they were from Robert, and then Edric would write back with profuse thanks for those gifts, and Robert would laugh and ask Varys, "Hey, what did I actually get him? What did I send him this year?" So again, Varys is involved, not so involved with Mya, but he's just deeply involved with both Gendry and Edric. In Edric's ways, you can see the angle, the political angle, maybe the stashing of an heir. With Gendry, I don't know, though. I just don't see that. It's very peculiar. Anyway, of course, of all these three, Edric is the only one with a noble mother. She's a Florent, Delena Florent, and this is a big part of why everyone knows. Robert carried Delena up to Stannis and to Selyse's marriage bed. He later would claim that he was too drunk to know which bed it was. Kind of believe him, doesn't absolve him, but he did get that drunk all the time. So Edric is really proud, really entertaining, and didn't spend enough time around his own father to realize how many flaws Robert had. He only sees the good because he knows him from afar, and he's extremely worships his father, idolizes Robert Baratheon. Maybe the only person in all of Westeros who feels that way about Robert. And of course, Davos.
And Ned Stark.
Ned Stark. Well, Davos is dead. So.
Yeah,
Ned
true.
would have been. Yeah. So yeah, he's really proud. He's really entertaining. Davos loves him. Everybody loves him. Stannis points this out. And Stannis is very keen on this. Stannis is notices this all the time because he's jealous of it. Both his brothers have this charisma that he doesn't have. People love both Robert and Renly. They would just follow them effortless charisma from both Robert and Renly. Edric has it too. And it's one of the things that Stannis is annoyed by, because it's like, this kid reminds me of not only how awful my brother can be. He shamed my wife's marriage bed. My wife hates this kid forever. It's an embarrassment. I don't like it either. I don't blame the kid, but I don't like the situation. He doesn't dislike the kid, but he doesn't like the situation, I mean to say. But he is very keen on seeing how everyone is charmed by Edric. He's like, man, he has my brother's gift, that charisma that Renly and Robert both had. This kid has it too. Everyone loves him. He charms everyone. He says that. He's like, did he charm you, Davos? He has that gift. He charmed Courtney Penrose. That's why he wouldn't give him up. That's why he died for him. Yeah, this kid, it just wins everyone over, which brings me to a really interesting point. A little more setup first. He shows a little more of his boldness and his just character by just disagreeing with Stannis in front of Davos. He's like, he shouldn't have cut your fingers off. He's like, well, it was justice. He's like, yeah, but he brought you fish and onions. He saved your life. And he's like, yeah, but I also was a smuggler. And he's like, my father wouldn't have cut your fingers off. And Davos is like, yeah, got me there. You're right. He wouldn't have. I agree with you, and it's like,
yeah, like Robert had his own flaws.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been that.
Yeah, it wasn't that. Like, you're right.
Flaws are probably definitely worse, I guess. But I agree with Edric that Davos didn't need to have his fingers cut off.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Edric on that one too. Edric and Robert, yeah.
From the mouth of babes.
So that wedding was in the year 287, meaning Stannis and Selysa's wedding. So Edric is about 11 when the series starts, been about 12 when we meet him, and about 13 now. Now, Delena, of course, spoiled. She's no longer fit to marry someone of her own status after that, unless it's someone like Tyrion. But Tyrion's status was so low that no. Tywin suggested Delena marry Tyrion, but no, he was refused. Delena would instead marry Sir Hosmund Norcross, a household knight. That's when Tywin is throwing Tyrion's ill marriage prospects in his face. He points this out. He's like, they wouldn't take you over this household knight. Now, Delena, we don't know anything about her, but there is a very clever little subtle catch by Nina here. This is Alistair Florent's household, by the way. Not niece of Lord of Brightwater Keep. Not the, So would have married someone much higher born. Now, she named her second son, not counting Edric, meaning her second trueborn son, Renly. At this point, Edric was living with Renly, because when Edric was first born, Stannis and Selyse didn't want to live with him and sent him to Storm's End to live with Renly. And that's where he lived for that whole time until the war broke out. So Nina's theory, and I'm 100% on board with it, is that she named her other son Renly as a way to curry favor with Renly and to maybe get some access to Edric. She wants to know her son. Like, what is a more viable theory than a mother finding, with very little agency, a mother trying to find some way to see her own son? Like, that's, you don't really need to understand the motivation behind that one. That's very clear. So yeah, Edric lived with Renly from a young age, but Renly was very young. When Edric was born, Renly was 10. So Uncle Renly was really just more of a older brother, rather than a father figure. He was an uncle, but he wouldn't have really come off that way as a 10-year-old. Renly wouldn't have actually been running Storm's End. It would have been, the Regency, the council, other people, the adults would have been handling that for him. Now, this would have been the time when Loras and Renly were forming their relationship. Edric probably too young to clock that or even understand it, but maybe. It definitely was concurrent. But by the time Edric was old enough to maybe even clock that, Renly was gone for long periods of time. He would have been at court a lot. Renly did spend a lot of time in the Red Keep, increasingly more as he got older. So Edric would have been, in a way, the Baratheon at Storm's End. No one would have called him that. That's improper. But he had the personality, the charm, and again, everybody loved him. So he would have been, like, as Nina puts it, the darling of Storm's End, the closest thing to a Baratheon, and a Baratheon by blood, and again, a Florent too. So doubly noble, which to them, that gives him a bit more status in the eyes of people who were lower ranked than him. Obviously, people of similar rank to him would look down on that. But, the lower ranking lordlings like, oh yeah, he's the king's son. Robert, as we said earlier, would visit once a year, train with him, and this meant everything to Edric. It was probably his favorite few days of the year. The last time he visited before his death, Edric was brought a small version of Robert's Warhammer, a miniature version of it. For some reason, Edric wasn't allowed to bring it with him to Storm's End. Or to Dragonstone. Maybe because they thought it would insult Stannis or something. I don't know. That seems odd. But let the kid keep his Warhammer.
A little terror with it.
Yeah,
and they're like, no, you're not bringing that. You're not breaking stuff here.
I like that idea. He's just ramming things with it all the time. He's a stag. He's got to smash things, right? He's got to butt heads and hammers. And yeah. So at some point in the 290s, it would have been pretty much no Renly around at all. When Edric would have been around 8, 9, or 10. And Sir Courtney Penrose was the Castellan. That's the one who, Melisandre murdered via Shadow Baby when Courtney refused to give Edric up. Remember, that's what Stannis says. He's like, why would they think I was going to kill this kid? Why would anyone think I'm trying to harm the boy? I chose Robert over the Targaryens. I want Edric to prove Robert's bastards aren't his, to prove the Lannister kids aren't Robert's. I'm not going to hurt the kid. Why does anyone think that? Well, they think that because of Melisandre, and they're right. Stannis is right that he doesn't intend Edric any harm, but they don't know that. It looks like Stannis wants Edric to get rid of another possible claimant, a stumbling block to his own path to the throne. That's the basic look here. Stannis wants the throne. Renly wants the throne. Stannis wants to get Renly out of the way. He would obviously want to get Edric out of the way too, or at least that seems likely. According to Stannis, that's not the case, but he can't convince anyone of that. And then, of course, it comes around that Melisandre does actually convince him to burn Edric. So they were right all along, Stannis. You just didn't know it yet. And Stannis was a little bitter about some of this because he doesn't have that effortless charisma that Robert, Renly, and Gendry have. And some other people clock that too. Like, Stannis doesn't like this kid. He's jealous of him. Not only the claim, but the charm that he doesn't have. I don't know. There's a lot of wariness around what Stannis' true intent was. And that gets confused by how it actually played out. And this is a key point. Stannis won't acknowledge this, even though he gets close to it, maybe. He couldn't quite bring himself to say this. Davos can't quite bear to think about sons in general because he lost his own. And that's who our POV is for most of Edric. Edric is basically the perfect son for a noble Westerosi. He's everything you want as a kid. Bold, proud, honest, precocious, stubborn, big, good looking even, just has all the qualities that you want. It's like if Randall Tarley passed over Sam because Dickon was the kind of kid he wanted. This is that kind of thing. This is Dickon, Tarley, and Edric Storm are of a peas in a pod in that sense. They're the ready to go, ready to fight. Nothing gets in their way. Like, that's the kind of bravery from day one you want to see in your son, especially your heir. Obviously, Edric isn't an heir, but if he was, he would be the ideal. A lot of men would look in Westeros and be like, that is the perfect kid. That is what I want my son to be like. They all want a kid like Edric, and very few of them will get it. And maybe that's a little bit of a statement by George here, just reminding us how silly all this birth status stuff is and how merit should matter more, and how Edric has merit too. Like, he does have the merit in addition to the birth. But because it's bastard birth, so much is withheld from him. So much prejudice is heaped on him. Yet he seems to handle it very well. It doesn't seem to make him bitter in ways that maybe Mya and Gendry are. Now, of course, he also has much better life. He gets nice food and a nice education and lives in a good place. So not all the bitterness is just he handles it better. Some of it's just privilege and status. Stannis once said, "Was there ever a name so apt? It proclaims his bastardy, his high birth, and the turmoil he brings with him." He's not just referring to Edric, but the full name, Edric Storm, the turmoil he brings with him, his bastardy, his high birth. Pretty succinct, actually, Stannis, and it gets at Stannis' frustrations here, right? He's like, it's frustrating that this kid is so much like Robert. It's frustrating that Robert, once again, is pushing his byblows on someone else, someone else's responsibility to take care of this kid. There's just a lot of frustration wrapped up, plus not to mention the wedding night stuff. So I think Stannis actually handles it fairly well, up until the point where he's willing to burn him. Then it's like, okay, Stannis, you've utterly failed here. This is the worst thing. And Stannis grossly turns it into a math question. He's like, yeah, he's just one kid against all the other kids, right? It's just one versus many. And Davos is like, Edric Storm versus... It's not a boy, it's Edric Storm. Say his name. And that's what prompts Stannis to get mad about the name. I've said his name. Is there a name that's so apt? Blah, blah, blah. So that's part of that argument. Davos wins the argument. He does. Great job, Davos. Stannis kind of all along kind of wanted to land on that, but Stannis' his pragmatism and his pride are so powerful, so overbearing within his own person that he can be led astray. Melisandre approves that. She's led him astray on several occasions. Speaking of Melisandre, speaking of Davos, speaking of how merit is such a recurring theme in Stannis' part of the country, part of Stannis' court. His people that follow Stannis, that's a vibe he passes on, something that he upholds. It's a big part of who Davos is. But as we said before, Gendry, seeing a positive role model under R'hllor, was willing to switch. He's like, yeah, I see Beric. I see Thoros. These are positive R'hllor role models. I will follow in their footsteps. Edric sees Melisandre. Doesn't have a great role model in this sense. Stannis converts to R'hllor, but Edric isn't so sure about Stannis, right? He doesn't know him that well. And he's like, no, this is another thing that people really like about him, that he's got this toughness unusual for a child. He is not going to switch to R'hllor. He's like, no, I'm a warrior's man, like my father. I worship the Seven, period. End of story. No change. Not going to happen. So the lack of influence by other people, the fact that he just idolizes Robert and there wasn't like a lot of other influences to step in and maybe take some of that influence away from Robert and give a real father figure in place, didn't really happen. So I really like that contrast between Gendry and Edric in that sense. It just really goes to show you it's who the role models are in that sense. A good R'hllorist like Thoros and Beric could bring you along, but someone like Melisandre, that's a little sketchy. And he doesn't know exactly what Melisandre's all about, but she did leech him. It's not clear whether he knows what was done with those leeches. I suppose not, but, he might have picked a little up on it, and it wouldn't come off well. He's not going to be pro things that stink of sorcery as a follower of the Seven. That's not going to be his vibe. And, of course, Edric is beyond a person, beyond a character. He is the linchpin of the big moral conundrum that Stannis, Davos, and Melisandre, and to a lesser extent, Axel, Florent, get involved with. And it resolves with Stannis agreeing with Davos and sailing to Dragonstone, or sailing to the Wall, even after Stannis is betrayed by Davos in sending Edric away. He does what Stannis should have done all along and just hopes that Stannis agrees. He's like, I'm willing to go down for this kid. I'm willing to die for this kid because it's the right thing to do, which is a good example for Edric to have set for himself. Maybe he doesn't see Davos as a father figure, but that may have been That's maybe something that he looks at later as a big turning point in his life, something that he should respect and be thankful to Davos for if he has the opportunity to be thankful to Davos for it. But here's a part that I think nearly everyone missed. After Stannis takes Storm's End, which of course he does via Shadow Baby, which maybe Edric heard about that too. It's kind of hard to keep that under wraps. Like, what happened there, right? That rumor would be flying all over the place, especially given the rumor would have started with Renly's death, which was quite mysterious and strange, and Brienne saw the shadow, etc. So Stannis' plan was to send Edric to Dragonstone and bring Melisandre to King's Landing to fight the Battle of the Blackwater with Melisandre at his side, helping him win. But his lords were like, don't bring Melisandre. Everyone's going to say it was her victory and not yours. He relents, sends Melisandre to Storm's End too. What does that mean? The ship that goes back to Storm's End contains both Edric and Melisandre same time. This is very likely when Melisandre starts coming up with her leech's plan, right? She manipulates Stannis into thinking that those deaths, Joffrey, Robb, and Balon, are because of the leeching, when it's vastly, vastly more likely that she saw those 3 deaths in the flames and then just acted like she was causing them through this ritual, and then made Stannis, which convinced Stannis of her power, which she doesn't actually have. The prophecy, the foresight, she does have that, but killing kings with bloody leeches, I don't think so, y'all. That's ridiculous. And pretty clearly, Melisandre does that sort of thing. She exaggerates her powers, misleads people as part of her bigger plan.
Birthing shadow babies? That's ridiculous. She definitely didn't do that either. I'm just saying, I
might
see
not believe
your
that.
point,
You're right. Yeah.
But she has done more than prophecy.
True.
That's what I want to say. More than that.
You're absolutely right. My point is, I guess that Edric wouldn't be privy to all this, but he might hear rumors, and that would still give him a dark sense of it all. And of course, Melisandre is just something wrong with her. Like, her red eyes and her giving off heat, like she's just something not quite right about her. So I think he would be, a little off, a little suspicious about that. So I think that's when she came up with the plan, when she's got Edric there and she's like, how am I going to, Stannis has pushed me aside. I got to bring him back in. And then she convinces him later that, hey, if you hadn't sent me home, you would have won the Battle of the Blackwater and blah, blah, blah. So that's, Edric is very much her way to get back in Stannis' inner circle after briefly being pushed aside. But Davos intervened. She got sent away. He got sent away. Melisandre didn't see it coming. And Edric didn't get to say goodbye to Shireen. That's pretty sad, but it's not the only thing sad here. They were good friends. They had some things in common, maybe that were missed. They have the same ancestry. Father Baratheon, Florent mother.
What are they, like double cousins or something?
Yeah,
like
what is that exactly?
Like
yeah, how does that work?
Twice over?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you call that. Because it's not the same Baratheon father nor the same Florent mother. Anyway, so
is Delena? That's not Salisa's sister. It is. So
yeah,
it's double
Salisa's
cousins.
sister.
That's what it is then.
Yeah,
it's exactly that. They're cousins in 2 different ways.
Yeah, double cousins. It's weird. So my sad looking ahead moment here is Edric Storm was sent to Lys, right? That's where he's at. That's as far as we know, he's still there. In fact, the appendix seems to confirm that at the end of A Dance with Dragons, that he's still there. Is he's going to find out that Stannis burned Shireen? And why? He's going to be like, oh, he maybe can't figure that out at his age right now, but in a year or two, maybe having conversations with his protectors. He's not by himself. He's got a guardian and some other men. They know a lot of what happened. He could come to know that, holy crap, Davos saved me from being burned alive. He did it to his own daughter, that jerk uncle of mine. What the hell? And this is not a kid that's going to take no for an answer. He's going to ask, like, what's going on? What's going on back in Westeros? What's happening? Why did they send me here? He's going to want to know all these things, and he's got that pride that he deserves to know. And he's going to just keep asking, and he'll find out what he can. So even when Edric is leaving to head to Lys, that's where we're going now. We're talking about Lys. He's still charming. Davos and the Maester, Maester Pylos, that is. They put him on a ship, and they hope Melisandre doesn't detect them, and they do this by just trying to involve her. Like, they don't account for her at all. The less that she's included in their plan, the less she's likely to take note of it. Seems to work. One of the conspirators is like, let's kill her. And Davos is like, nope. Better if we just pretend she doesn't exist, and hopefully that dodges her prophecy radar. Also, Edric says things like, I don't mind math so much, but history's my favorite. You know, like, can you be more likable?
You can see what him and Shireen had in common.
Yeah, right. Shireen liked history too. Yeah.
They probably had lessons together, right?
They did. Oh, absolutely. In fact, they were at their lessons together when they're like, hey, we're taking you away now, you know. And because he's so stubborn, he's not quite sure what's going on. He kind of senses something is off here. He's like, I want to see my uncle before we go. And he's like, your uncle doesn't want to see you. Yes, Davos has to lie to get him moving. And it's kind of sad, but Davos isn't too bothered by it, knowing the alternative is the kid gets burned alive. So I think he can kind of properly weight these options here and be like, look, this is nothing. Making this kid a little sad or hurt is nothing compared to burning alive. And he has this moment of maturity at the end where he kind of accepts it. He's kind of sad. He's like, well, shouldn't I get to say goodbye to Shireen? He's a boy for a minute there. It's a little bit heartbreaking. But then he's back to his noble demeanor, 13-year-old noble demeanor. He says, may the Father judge you justly, Lord Davos. For what you're doing right here is the unspoken part. And Davos is like, I'm pretty sure the Father's going to judge me just fine, actually. And I think Edric will realize that in time, you know, assuming enough time happens. Now, let's remember, who else was exiled to Lys? Aerion Brightflame, a good, 90 years prior or so, almost exactly 90 years prior. But very different circumstances. And of course, Edric is younger. Edric is a lot less likely to father bastards in Lys, like Aerion Brightflame probably did. And that's a quality of his father we hope he doesn't have. The leader of the group keeping Edric safe is Andrew Estermont, Sir Andrew Estermont. Now, while Edric maybe isn't the type to be so distracted by drink and women, especially at his age, Andrew Estermont and his men, maybe they get slack on protecting him because of that reason. But that said, I'm not sure they're in any danger being so far 13? Away. Huh?
13?
Yeah, he's 13. Yeah.
I mean, all it takes is being around that stuff for a little while.
It wouldn't take long.
He'll be into it real quick.
Hopefully they'll activate his inner Robert. Yeah. And if Melisandre were better connected, she might learn of his being there in Lys through her other contacts in the temple, because there's a big old Temple of R'hllor in Lys, but she seems like she's rogue right now. I don't think she's that connected to the temple hierarchy. So over time, Edric might really realize what kind of danger he was or is in, but he wouldn't like having run from it. He's a warrior's man like his father. He would want to go face the danger and win and defeat it and face that challenge, overcome that challenge rather than hide from it. I really suspect he is eager to go back. He doesn't want to be where he is. He wants to be in Westeros. He wants to be in his father's kingdom. He wants to do stuff. And as he's getting older, these thoughts will become less childish and more specific and more... he'll take them more to heart, more set on doing them. He doesn't have the means so easily to do so. He can't order his protectors around, although he might charm them into becoming followers, and then they'll do what he says, especially as he gets a little older. But here's the thing, getting older. We've spoken, and other people have spoken, a lot about Edric Dayne and the 5-year gap. Edric Dayne may be the most clear, apparent change to his story because of the lack of a 5-year gap, but Edric Storm seems like he was a huge candidate to be impacted by the 5-year gap in a very similar way. It's like both the Edrics lost their important years that they needed. I mean, he is like Robert in personality, at least in a lot of the most meaningful ways in terms of like martial prowess and bravery. Has the size. 5 more years, he might have been tall. He might have looked like Robert or Renly at 18. Big, fearsome, intimidating, holding a giant hammer. Big old beard, looking older than he is. Just people ready to follow him because he looks the part and is the part and can prove it. But I guess that's just not happening. Maybe that never was the plan, but I don't think, I kind of hard to believe it wasn't, or something like that. Like, this kid was presented to us as the spitting image of Robert Baratheon, and the original plan was for enough time for him to become the age Robert was when the rebellion happened, or very close to it. So, like, it's really hard to see that as not having been part of George's plan. But now, yeah, I don't know so much about that. Now, here's another angle. Salladhor Saan, no longer in the employ of Stannis, got tired of waiting to get paid, lost a bunch of ships. His employment with Stannis may have cost him money in the long run. He may have come out behind. He might be looking at ways of recouping that, which, well, he has been doing that. He's been back to piracy. Salladhor Saan, the Saans are a Lysine family. It's unknown exactly what sort of connections they still have, what kind of home base they have there, how they're viewed by other Lyseni. But the point is here, he's not like Melisandre in that he doesn't have connections in the city where this Baratheon dude is. Maybe this is Salladhor's long-term way to get paid by a Baratheon after all. We just said, well, how does Edric get back to Westeros? Well, maybe just a ship. But how does he come back to Westeros in force? This way. This is one way anyway. Salladhor Saan says, hey, I can back this kid for Lord of Storm's End, and when he gets it, he'll pay me the money I'm owed from Stannis and whoever else, whatever debt he thinks he's owed. Edric would probably be like, all right, I could do that. And who would the alternative claimant be to Storm's End? Someone Mya Stone married, or Gendry? There may not even be stiff opposition here. The opposition may be just a completely new family that young Griff wants to put on after Connington and his people's advice, Varys' advice. Or Varys may advise, hey, no, team up with this kid. Bring him on. Right? That's a possibility. More on that in a second. So I think Solid knows that they're there. It's just a matter of whether he wants to do anything about it. So Edric is also an interesting comparison as we move into talking about the potential for him to be involved in Aegon's faction. It comes back to Jon Connington and the whole story that Jon Connington drank himself to death in exile. That's an interesting little angle to consider with Edric and his protectors in a place that would very much tempt them into doing lots of drinking and partying. But Jon Connington didn't fall for it. It was just a cover story, and maybe that'll be something like this here. It's too bad he wasn't on TV because his lines are so funny, but on the other hand, it's good when a character isn't on TV because we don't have their potential endgame ruin. We don't know what happens because Gendrick isn't a story. Gendrick isn't a character. Gendry and Edric were combined. Mya wasn't in the show at all. So yeah, so that's good. So we don't know. We don't know how they're going to end up. We don't have Gendry and Arya hooking up and then Gendry getting Storm's End. That happened on the show. We have no reason to believe that's the case in the books. It's way low on the things that the show gives us where certain things are like, yeah, that's probably going to happen. And other things are like, no way. This is pretty close to no way, at least as far as like we should think about it that way, because like they clearly changed so much. They mashed up characters. Yeah. Like how can you look at that the same? Gendrick getting Storm's End might be the Edric Storm part of the story, but it could be Gendry.
You said Gendrick.
Yeah. I've been saying Gendrick a lot.
Oh,
because in the show he was both. Yeah. So yeah, I think, the other angle to Aegon I want to point out here, Aegon the Sixth, young Griff, all that. Imagine him hearing this story that, well, putting it from Edric's point of view. Imagine hearing that young Griff, calling himself Aegon Targaryen, has taken the throne, calling himself the son of Rhaegar. Well, one of the things Edric bragged about was my father beat Rhaegar on the Trident, killed Rhaegar and took the throne. What happens if Edric sitting there in exile is like, what? Rhaegar's son took the throne? My father killed that guy. I gotta go. Like, if anything is going to draw him back to Westeros, some of these other things might. This is another one. He's like, you've got Aegon Targaryen trying to make everyone think he's Rhaegar's son by doing things like maybe having Darkstar on his side, wielding Dawn, doing all these other things to remind people of Rhaegar, maybe having Dornish allies, maybe marrying our Arianne Martell, just doing all these things that remind people of Rhaegar. Here comes Edric Storm trying to replay his father's role. I'm going to kill that son of Rhaegar just like my father. I don't know if that's what's up, but it's... if he does this, that might make him an enemy of Dany to follow in his father's footsteps. On the other hand, maybe he could become an ally of Dany. I don't know. How is Dany going to face off against Aegon, right? That's a big open question. And somehow, in the middle of all this, he could fit in, Edric could fit in all this as a ally or enemy to both or either. So let's work towards the end of our episode by summarizing and looking at some of these characters as a whole. The title section, 3 Baratheon bastards. So in reviewing, we have one who doesn't seem to know, but is an open secret, even though I kind of lean towards her knowing. There still are discussions about denial and clarity, and maybe it will be fully proven to her later and to a point that she can't deny it or feel open about it. And of course, Gendry doesn't know at all, doesn't even know his father was noble, let alone the king, no idea whatsoever. And then Edric, who's very much knows, is very proud of it, speaks about it as often as he can, and is willful about being like him as much as he can be, as much as he knows. That is itself a fascinating, realistic aspect of birth and privilege. The kid who knows he's the son of the king is the proudest and most confident. Go figure. It's not just about that, though. It's the upbringing of knowing you're getting treated better than everybody else, for the most part, by having better education, better food, better housing, all these other things. Like, that tells you something. That's hard to not feel subconsciously. Mya Stone isn't getting that. Gendry's getting even less, although he doesn't realize he maybe is owed it to a certain extent. Hopefully this wasn't lost in the shuffle too much, but while it's very plain Robert had nothing... well, not nothing to do with these children's upbringings, very, very little to do with these children's upbringings. Their mothers were sort of forced out of the pictures as well. Maybe less so for Gendry. Again, we talked about that separately. We're not really sure what happened there. She might have been an exception. But Edric was sent away from Delena, and Mya was given a role that probably didn't have her connected to her mother at all, probably separated in a similar sense. And we don't even know her name. So basically, because Edric and Mia's father is who he is, they can't just be left alone and hope nothing goes wrong. There's a chance that someone comes along and would pluck up Edric and would use him as a claimant against his own will. Maybe less so Mya, but still, the issue is there. So it's kind of heartbreaking in that sense. These bastards, whether they're nobly born or not, they don't have proper families. Even when they get taken care of, it's not by their mother and father. It's by their extended family or by someone else entirely. They end up in places like the Brother Without Banners. They try to find their own family. They make a family. It's like, I don't have one, so I'm going to go ahead and find someone to join. That's very human. As far as their collective outlooks, of course, the claims are a big part of all this. We're talking about a family that is very likely wiped out. So it'd be one thing if there were like 50 Baratheons, like there's that many Tyrells. Like if there was one Tyrell bastard, if Edric was Edric Flowers, I don't think it wouldn't be that big a deal. Who would care? I mean, maybe if he was like a really older son of Mace or something like that, maybe. But if he's just like Mace's younger brother's bastard, there's a bajillion Tyrells. No one would care. It doesn't matter. His claim is nothing. There's just so many. What's he going to do? Kill 50 Tyrells? Who's going to help him do that? Right? It's unfathomable. But the state of House Baratheon, I mean, I said it at the beginning, there's nobody, right? In a book or two, we might have no one with the trueborn name Baratheon left. Thus, the door is very open for one of these bastards to be legitimized or to claim it via those means, because that path is so wide open. And Varys, again, comes into the picture because hidden claims like those that can be found in bastards are a sneaky way of advanced planning. Like as if you're an arch plotter like Varys, again, Varys, maybe he's got Tyrek stashed, and he certainly had Tyrion in mind, he and Illyrio, for a possible candidate to take over Castle Rock once they've installed their regime. As I said earlier, they're going to have a plan for all 7 great houses, whether it's a marriage, whether it's some sort of violence, or an alliance, or some sort of that. They've thought it through one way or the other, and Storm's End is literally the one that they have conquered so far, right? Aegon has already taken Storm's End as of early the Winds of Winter. So it's the one castle they actually have, too. It isn't just one of the 7 main considerations. It's the one they have in their possession. They have a lot more ability to dictate what happens with the ownership of Storm's End, given they have possession of it. So I'm not out here suggesting King Gendry or King Edric, even though they're the children of Robert, especially given Varys is who we're talking about here, and King Aegon is their plan. But having, a Baratheon on your side, or maybe even multiples backing you up, it would stiffen his claim. It would stiffen Aegon's claim. It would make it look more legit. I don't know if Edric would be on their side, given the whole Rhaegar-Robert thing. But, if he's offered Storm's End as a part of it, maybe he would make that compromise. I don't know. Edric becoming older and doing things as an adult instead of as a boy is a little harder to figure. But regardless, Lord of Storm's End is on the table. I guess Edric is the most likely. Mya is possible through marriage and other reasons. Gendry is older than Edric, so if somehow both of their claims are out there, Gendry's would have a little of that going for it. But of course, Edric's being more noble has a lot going for him too.
It has lived there.
And it's lived there. It has charmed so many people that are there. Yeah, he's more familiar to the Storm's End people, to the Baratheons in general. They've all known about his existence since he was born. So yeah, he's a kind of a known commodity. Yeah, Gendry's like, hey, where'd you come from?
He's a Stormlander, whereas Gendry's a Crownlander.
That too,
he's not
good
really,
point.
He's a Baratheon, but not really from there.
That's a good point, yeah. So I do think it's possible, in fact, likely, that one of them ends up with Storm's End at the end of the story, and I do think Edric is the most likely. Probably in that order, Edric, Gendry, Mya. But obviously, since there are other Bastards of Robert out there, there are other possibilities. Mya is a little more possible if both Edric and or Gendry die or are unavailable or something like that. The idea would be to keep Baratheon blood at Storm's End. If Mya married somebody else and did it, it would be a little bit like how Orys Baratheon married the last Durrandon princess to keep that bloodline still in play as well. So, yeah. As to Gendry involved as a potential stash, now, given the fact that we have both Tyrek and Tyrion, Varys is maybe smart enough to think, hey, let's not put all our eggs in one basket. Let's have a couple of potential claimants in our back pocket for all these major seats. But again, he sent Gendry to the Night's Watch. I guess he could be thinking a king can legitimize even someone who took the black. Maybe that's his angle. Maybe that actually is a really good place to stash someone. Make Aegon king. Once he's king, Aegon can be like, all right, that kid up there that you have, the blacksmith kid, I legitimize him and I remove his vows. Just like you can legitimize a bastard, you can remove Night's Watch vows. Robb specifically told his mother that he could do that. So if Robb can do it, then why not the Iron Throne? So maybe I'm going a little too far to repeat myself in suggesting that Varys sending Gendry to the Night's Watch is a dead end. Maybe not. It definitely makes it a little harder to figure, though. It's a little confusing. But also, as I mentioned earlier, Thoros never saw any results. Never saw any grand destiny for Gendry, but maybe he hasn't looked. Maybe he's just been looking at other things. He hasn't had a reason to maybe specifically look at Gendry's future in the flames, Poll results. At the beginning of this episode, we asked you all to weigh in on who might get Storm's End. Y'all voted Mya Stone did less well than someone else, which, given Westerosi rules and the way claims work and her status, it's not that strange. But I'm slightly amused by blank did better than Mya Stone by only 1%. Overwhelmingly, y'all picked Edric Storm, almost a full 2/3, with a 1/4 going to Gendry. So, yeah, you guys are pretty much in line with me. I also think Edric is the most likely. And I would put Gendry next. So there you go. Well, I think we're pretty much in line there. Is that kind of how you see it, Ashaya?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's got to be Edric. I think people just get the show kind of confuses things a little bit for them and all that. And the 5-year gap not existing maybe affects things. My other question is, like, will we see who owns Storm's End at the end? Maybe we don't. Maybe we don't know who has it. Maybe it's not wrapped up in a neat little bow and we just don't know. You know what I mean? That's
a possibility I hadn't really considered, but I can't say you're wrong about to add that to the list.
I mean, you don't get resolution on every single thing.
No. You're right. We can't. It just wouldn't be feasible. Like, the story doesn't work that way, I guess. Like, the logistics within the story don't create a situation where we could have some narrator tell us that everything that happens at the end there. That just doesn't, some things will have to be left unknown.
Yeah, it's like when you see a documentary or like something in the end, they say like, Edric Storm came back 3 years later and took Storm's, like, okay.
Yes, when you see any of those like biopics or whatever, they give you the rest. We didn't have time for the whole everything. So here's what happened the rest of the time.
And I do like that they do that.
So I'm really curious about Edric and his view on Targaryens because, Robert hated Targaryens with a passion, but I don't think Robert passed that on to Edric. He was very little time spent around him. He knows Edric knows his father killed Rhaegar, but does he know Robert hated Rhaegar, that Robert hated Targaryens? He might not have. And if he doesn't know that, then that really opens up a lot more potential for a positive connection between Edric and Dany, or Edric and other people that we like, other people that indicate perhaps a happy landing, a safe ending, something like that.
I think if Robert visited him every year, there was a good chance that something came up about his beliefs in that. It's possible it didn't. It's definitely possible.
I just wouldn't take it for granted.
Yeah, I wouldn't take it for granted that he did. But I would say, like, if they're training and fighting, he might be like, and here's what you do for a Targaryen pet. I don't know.
It's also, he's at that perfect age where you cannot assume how Dany will look on him. Dany looking on a son of Robert, probably not good. But he's 13. Is she going to look on him like that? Is maybe old enough to look on as an enemy. Tywin would look at as a baby as an enemy, as someone that you might have to kill or should be killed for political reasons. Dany's very different when it comes to children 99% of the time, maybe not 100% of the time. We've seen an exception or two. And Edric Storm might be a candidate to be an exception because he's Robert's son, and Dany really, really, really doesn't like Robert. On the other hand, she's been coming around a little bit on that, slowly and surely. Not so much that she's coming around to liking Robert, but she's coming around to hate him less and understand that her father was bad and that Robert maybe wasn't so out of line in overthrowing her father. She hasn't gotten there yet, but you can see that some of that progress is maybe being made, or at least some headway. Maybe it won't get all the way, but at least that track isn't entirely trod on. Last little subtopic here. Will any of them ever meet each other? Yeah, I keep saying Gendrick as a mashup, but what if they actually meet and they could become buddies and that'll be their ship name? Like, hey, it's Gendrick. They're friends.
I don't think you want to say a ship name for that.
You never know.
A friendship name.
Hey, you never know.
They're not Lannisters or Targaryens. Come on.
Yeah, you're right. They're related. They can't do that.
But yeah. I feel like my gut reaction is that if those two met, they wouldn't like each other. Well, I think maybe Gendry would be open to it, but I feel like Edric would be threatened and would haughty and I don't know. I don't think it would go well, I guess, is my gut reaction.
Yeah, it's tough to say because like he might be like you. Yeah, because if Edric was older, he might be able to accept it more easily. And Gendry just has negative feelings towards their father, which Edric wouldn't necessarily appreciate or agree with.
Yeah, but like, and Gendry's older than him, so that's why he would feel more threatened,
Yeah.
I don't know. And Gendry would have gone through so many like cool life experiences at that point, I don't know. Edric might admire him or look fondly on him, but it might just never. They may never meet.
Yeah. And speaking of meetings, there's obviously other possibilities. Mya could get involved, although she's perhaps less likely to leave the Vale and meet anybody. But Bella and Gendry met, and that was really funny. And there's 9 other kids out there, so. Yeah, maybe there's some other humorous meetings or some not so humorous meetings, some meaningful, plot-driven meetings. We were joking about Gendry and Edric as like a ship. Friendship is definitely possible, but a marriage, like Mya marrying Gendry, I don't think so. That's just too incestuous. These aren't Targaryens, even though they do have some Targaryen blood in their ancestry. Yeah, I don't know about that. So yeah, and that's the thing. Like if Gendry is going to be the Lord of Storm's End, or Edric is, maybe we get that far. We don't necessarily get a pairing, a spouse for them. You know, that's the thing. Like you were saying, we don't necessarily get a full. Everything is set. Well, maybe that part happens, but it isn't like a marriage and children. Also, it may be implied that that's coming, but we don't necessarily know who that will be. 3 characters with the same father, none who know each other or even know of each other. Lots of possibilities for them as individuals and as children of the recently dead King Robert. That parentage can be a blessing or a curse or both, depending on the circumstances, depending on the context. It might get them ahead later in life. It might get them killed. From major political possibilities, massive impact on the plot, to potential character moments like Gendry learning who his father is, Edric learning who his father really was in terms of personality. I don't mean identity. Or just other mysteries being cleared up with Mya. We have a lot of uncertainties there. There's a lot of moving character moments possible and political implications that are huge. Both of these are full of potential. Melisandre was more right than we knew. Or that she even knew there is power in King's blood, y'all. A couple of questions from you guys here. From SK Gano. Who do you think that Robert, without Ned his hand, discovering the truth about his royal kids, would do? Would he do an Aegon the Unworthy and legalize them? No. I don't think he would do that. I think Aegon was just cruel and wanted to inflict harm on other people. I think he liked the idea of creating all this chaos and civil war. I think Robert is more of a just can't be bothered. Robert doesn't have the I want to screw everyone up vibe to him. He doesn't have that I would love to ruin things, to mess things up for the sake of messing things up. Robert doesn't seem to get pleasure from that. Robert gets pleasure from the actually sleeping with women.
He gets pleasure from pleasure.
He gets pleasure from pleasure. Yeah, he doesn't get pleasure from cruelty. And from the thought of Robert wrecked the realm through his laziness, through his inattentiveness, not through trying to do it, right? If he had aimed to do it, he might have done a better job of wrecking the realm. But Aegon the Unworthy was just a different kind of motivation. The results are similar in a lot of ways, but milder. I don't foresee a Blackfire rebellion of 5 generations of Baratheon bastards troubling the realm, starting with Edric Storm or something like that. The Stormfire rebellions, Actually sounds really cool, but I don't see it coming. Guilty Undertaker says, if Robert paid more attention to his bastards, he'd have realized that Cersei's kids couldn't be his. Oh, very good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. It might have... Talk about denial. Robert had quite a bit as well about his whole relationship with Cersei, his whole marriage with Cersei, and all his children.
Did he at least see every child once?
No, definitely not.
No, you never saw
He never saw Gendry.
Yeah, he never saw Gendry.
Well, he did, but didn't know who he was. He saw him in a crowd.
Yeah. Even as a tiny baby, he never saw him. Okay. No. Yeah. Well, then, yeah. If he'd just seen every baby.
Maya remembers him throwing her in the air. So he definitely, he apparently had more interest in Maya than her mother. He kept going to see her even after he lost interest in her mother. But yeah, never saw Gendry after, and never apparently.
Still, you think he saw what did he see? At least 3 kids then, right?
Yeah, he didn't see those twins either. He fathered them at Castle Rock. They were born after he left.
At least 3, I think.
Yeah, right? At least 3.
So that's pretty good comparison to be why are these 3 kids blind? He was just lazy and inattentive is the answer.
Not thoughtful either.
Yeah, not thoughtful.
Not an active mind. Not an overactive imagination. Not an active imagination. Not an imagination. The trivia question was, again, Robert's last bastard was Bara, who Robert fathered on the virgin sex worker in 298. Bara was murdered on the order of Cersei's early A Clash of Kings. Who did the actual killing? Allar Deem. Allar Deem was sent to the wall by Tyrion along with Janos Slynt after this dirty deed. And Tyrion told the captain of the ship, if Allar Deem falls overboard on the way to the wall, I'd owe you a favor. And did that favor happen? Well, we got a lot of chapters on the wall, including plenty with Janos Slynt. Never see Allar Deem again, do we? Yeah, that dude, bottom of the ocean. He lives with the Merlings. He's down there with getting the the patch face treatment. Hopefully something worse. He deserves it. In this episode, we didn't put too much effort into discussing what other episodes we have that relate to these topics, but I will do so now. We have a whole episode on the city of Lys, the free city of Lys, their whole history, many political connections. I believe we say a few things about Edric in there, because why wouldn't we? He's there, and that's relevant. Arianne, the Winds of Winter chapters are very relevant in terms of what's going on with Young Griff's faction. They're taking of Storm's End, they're invading the Stormlands and all that. Very relevant. One could make comparisons and considerations with regards to Edric Storm and Young Griff and all that. And of course, Valar Rereadus, our book series contains, our reread series contains a lot of the talk about Gendry and Mya Stone and Edric and Robert and Cersei and Davos and all these other related characters here and there and everywhere. We hope you have already listened to Valar Rereadus, but maybe it's time for a Valar Rereadus. On behalf of Ashea, I'm Aziz. Thanks to Nina for her great takes. A lot of excellent notes here today. She told me as we were writing this episode, I've got a lot of takes on this one, and I was very pleased to hear that. And I was very pleased to read the actual takes themselves in addition to knowing they were coming. Thanks to Joey Townsend for our music. Thanks to Michael Klarfeld for our intro video and the maps. You can get your own Klarfeld maps at claridox.de. The link is in the description, whether you're watching video or listening to the podcast version. No episode next week, but we'll be back most weeks this year for more deep dives into A Song of Ice and Fire, House of the Dragon, Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and everything else Westeros and Essos related. And you know what to do, as I always say, and am not going to stop. Valar Rereadus, my friends.